Well, guys, as I said, tonight we are going to combine today and Thursday's stuff because Thursday, after I went through it, one of the topics we'll still touch on today. And well, one topic we'll go through today, and then the other topic we'll touch on because it didn't really have, like, I didn't really have any notes to write down. It's more of just showing you guys a list that you can use to find some investment companies. And then the other thing I kicked out because it didn't really have anything that was new, I guess. So we're going to be doing today and Thursday stuff tonight, and then Thursday we're not going to have a meeting this week. So yeah, the first thing we're talking about is hashtags, using hashtags to try to help draw people in, help them to discover you and use it across your marketing. So this first stuff comes from smarthousecreative.com. It's letter A in the syllabus. So using hashtags in your social media posts and across your marketing campaign can help focus your message and allow people looking through those hashtags to better find your posts. So some of the common ones for indie films are hashtag indie film, hashtag support indie film, hashtag filmmaking, hashtag set life, hashtag filmmaker, hashtag film festival, and more. So like in, I don't know what I'm, like in this photo right here, like LinkedIn and some other platforms allow you to follow hashtags and see how many followers a particular hashtag has. So you can see that hashtag film has 64,885 followers. That can help you figure out how many people look at that hashtag, how many people follow it, and then also how much competition you're going to have. The more people that look for this hashtag, yeah, there's more people to see your post, but there's also a lot more posts with that hashtag. So you're going to be buried in a pile of other ones. So sometimes having the biggest number attached to a hashtag isn't always the best. You want hashtags to help people find your content. And if you're going into something that has 1 million followers, then somebody has to sort through 1 million other posts to find your stuff. Not necessarily 1 million, but if there's 1 million followers for that hashtag, that means there's a lot more posts with that hashtag attached to it, maybe even more than 1 million. And so you have a lot more competition to have people find your content. Even though there's a lot more people following it, there's still a lot more people posting with it too. Priscilla, did you want to say something?
Got it. I was just going to say, yeah, there's always pros and cons. You also have to be careful not to make it too niche, because there is such a thing as like, hey, you liked this hashtag, what about this? And different apps will suggest it to you. If you make it too Uber specific, of course you can have the Uber specific ones, but also add some of those more general ones that are maybe a little different with a little variation, because that way you'll have less competition, but you'll also be found easier than if you only use that specific one.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you only use the ones that maybe have 10 followers, then yeah, you might get those 10 people to see your thing, but you're only going to get those 10 people to see it because nobody else is looking it up. So you do want to, you, like Priscilla said, you want to do a mixture of very personalized ones that are very niche and specific to your project or your production company. And then also ones that are a little more generic, stuff like indie film, stuff like support indie film, because a lot of people post with that, but it's less niche than like saying your specific film title or support my film,
Also,
with your actual title.
Also, depending on the app you're using, it will show you how many people are following that hashtag or how many people are using that hashtag, which can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I think it was LinkedIn and I think Instagram and I believe Twitter does as well. They show you how many people are following it for certain hashtags. So you can see how many people are, like, those posts are going to appear on their wall or their feed or whatever it may be based on the platform that they're using. And so there's a bigger chance that your post will appear on those people's wall or feed or whatever it may be, depending on the platform. smarthousecreative.com, they recommend using a single hashtag to represent your project across all social media platforms. Usually that's going to be something with your title or a variation on your title if you're doing it for a film. So if your title includes commonly used words like the interrogation, then you can always add film or movie to the end of the tag and make it hashtag the interrogation film or hashtag interrogation film. If you have a title that begins with the, you may choose to include it or not in the hashtag. For ours, our short film is actually going to be called the interrogation, so I would include it because hashtag interrogation film could mean that it's just a film about an interrogation, which it is, but there could be others that are specific to that. So the interrogation film makes it a little bit more specific to our project for that one hashtag that we would use if I were to post that hashtag across all of our social media.
Yeah, especially because our name isn't super niche or super unique, so it's a lot easier to get mixed up with other things.
Right, and that's why you would add film or movie or short film or whatever it may be to the end of it, so that it's that one is specific to your thing. And that is usually the one you're going to use across every post, making sure that if anyone wants to look up that specific one, they'll find all of your posts.
I would recommend, even if you're trying for a more niche audience, to actually see and use that showing how many people are following it as data too, so that you know, okay, this many people are following this, and then try to find, okay, I'm going to come up with some specific ones that a few people are following, and then I'm going to use some of these ones that are maybe not so big, but still big enough to where it would reach like a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's exactly like when we were talking about keywords. It's kind of like doing keyword research, but you're doing it specifically for using hashtags, because you're looking up, you can find the information of how many people look up this hashtag. If you have an idea for one, you can literally look it up on the other platforms to see if to see how many people are also looking that up. How many people thought of this wording or this word choice that I'm going to use? The only difference between keywords and hashtags for wording is that the hashtags are going to be extremely specific to the hashtag itself. Hashtag film is going to be different than hashtag films with an S. So you could look up both and see which one looks, which one has more followers, which one do I want to use, because both are probably used, but one has more, one has less, and you'd have to see what the data says. And that's a great example that Priscilla brought up, to do the research on it before you actually utilize those. Kind of look it up to see which ones make sense. The way you say something might not be the way everybody says stuff. Maybe people don't put in film. Maybe they look up movie more often. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do film. But if you look at the data and see which one people look at more, you can use that specific wording to have a wider reach with your hashtags. But like I said, if you have a title for your film and this is going to be your specific hashtag that you're using across all of your media for that specific film, and it begins with the, then you may choose to include it or not. So if the title of your movie was The Red Chair, you might do hashtag red chair film, or you might do hashtag red chair movie, or you could do hashtag the red chair film. It's up to you what you want to do with that. That is not going to be something that people are looking up too often. Even if you have a common name, that's why you want to add like film or movie. And that way, it's only for the people that want to look up more of your posts, to actually see what you're doing or follow you or look at all the content that you're pushing out, so they can learn more about your film, your project, your production company, whatever it may be. That is for them to specifically look up you and your project. And so it's not going to have a lot of followers. It's just going to be specifically to get your fan base or your audience that wants to learn more about you to be able to easily find your other posts without having to search through every single social media account and all of that to find, and like scrolling down and everything to find what you're posting about. If your title is unique, then you can choose to include or leave out film or movie from the end of it. So if it's something that it's like a different word, it's a word you made up, or it's something that's not really used a lot, you don't have to put film at the end, like hashtag blobberblue film.
A good
If your
example
film
would
name is
be,
blobberblue, then you could just say hashtag blobberblue and leave it at that, because that's not very common, and I don't even know if it's common at all. I just made it up. So you might find that just putting hashtag blobberblue works perfectly well to separate you from everyone else without saying blobberblue film or blobberblue movie.
like Inception is a really good example of that. Like if you see that hashtag, you're like, huh? And like, what is that? And then you'd see it's a film.
Yeah. And so you could do that as well, and you don't always have to put film or movie at the end of it. But if it's a more common wording for your title, then you want to make sure people know that you're specifically talking about the film that you're doing, and not just talking about a red chair or something like that, depending on what your title is. Hashtags also aren't case sensitive. So you don't have to do any capitalization or leave everything lowercase, but sometimes using both capital and lowercase letters can help readability. Like for ours, media studies, I capitalize the M and the S. That way it separates those two words, makes it easier to read, even though they're put together. And so you can decide to do that too, like they show on here, make a wish. Instead of doing all lowercase, make a wish. It's like Makia wish. You could read it like that if you don't know what make a wish is. And then if they capitalize those letters, even though they don't have to, it just makes it easier to read and see what this hashtag is. But know that if somebody else capitalizes the M or the A or the W or whatever else, they'll still find the hashtag, whether it's spelled like this or like that. They'll be able to find it because they aren't case sensitive. For you, however, you might just want to make it easier for people to read, and so you might want to capitalize separate words. But that's up to you and your choice of how to do it. I would say if you have a really long title, you also want to think of what you could do to shorten it for a hashtag. So you don't want it to be way too long. Something like this, I found this picture where they're saying, like, try to keep your hashtag shorter. Don't do, if you're going to some event, for this instance, then Vision Expo West is amazing. They're doing a huge long one, and they're saying, instead, just do Vision Expo. Instead of doing Las Vegas or what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's a super long hashtag, just Vegas. Shorter ones are usually easier to find, and they're easier for people to look up. So you usually don't want to do a huge, super long title or super long phrase for a hashtag. You want to keep it pretty simple and short if you can. So if you have a film title that is really long, you don't want a super long and hard to follow or hard to reuse hashtag. Because the other thing hashtags can do is your fan base and people who want to talk about your film or help share it to others can use that hashtag in their own posts to help spread the word. I just saw this amazing indie film. I think everybody should go watch it. Hashtag whatever the film title is. And that way people know about it, they can hear about it, they can click on it, and they can go find you very easily through that hashtag, which is why you want that specific one to your film for that reason as well. But you want the hashtag to be easy to read and quick to write out, because it also makes it easier to remember, and it makes it easier for people to spell it right. If you have Vision Expo West is amazing, and somebody accidentally misspells it and leaves out the is or leaves out the s, then it's not going to attach to the hashtag you use in all your posts. And so people aren't going to be able to connect it to you. as easily. They'll have to actually look it up separately from that person's post. So that's another thing shorter hashtags can do. It can make the people sharing that hashtag spell it right and allow it to attach back to you if anybody wants to see their post, click on it and find out what they're talking about. So for instance, if you have a film that is titled The Way We Remember the Things from Our Childhood, it could be shortened to hashtag Way We Remember Film or something similar, or another variation on the title that isn't the whole title itself. Things from our childhood.
Remembering our childhood memories. It could be a bunch of them.
Yeah, and you could just, it still connects back to your film. It just, you are doing a separate title because your title is just too long.
Yeah, you know how, like, as long as it evokes your film, it doesn't have to be necessarily the title of your film. It can be maybe using a word or an expression from your title or from your film, but don't be too like, oh, it has to have like the majority of the name on it. You can get creative.
Yeah, and then you can use that hashtag across all your social media instead of the title itself, and it'll still connect to your film when people search it. So like Priscilla said, she just gave out a plenty. Childhood memories film, remember our childhood film, the way we remember, things from our childhood. There's different ways you can break it up, shorten it, use different parts of it, or just use words that connect to the main theme or core idea of the film itself. Once you figure out your primary hashtag you'll use across the board on each post and update about the film, then you can begin expanding your potential audience reach by including additional hashtags that maybe correspond to the specific phase of your production or release. So you could do, if you're crowdfunding, you could do hashtag crowdfunding. So now you have two hashtags. You have the title, or you have a variation on your title so that people know specifically what this thing is. If they want to look you up, they can easily do that through that hashtag. And now you are also sharing the production phase you're in. So if you're crowdfunding, you're doing your title for one hashtag and crowdfunding for another. That way people know that this idea you're trying to do, you're trying to crowdfund for it. Or you could do hashtag set life or hashtag production if you're currently in production or principal photography. Hashtag principal photography you could also do, but that's probably going to be a lot less common than production or set life. Hashtag film festival, hashtag distribution, hashtag theater or something, theater near you, or I don't know, something like that to share what phase of production that film, that title idea is in. When creating these kinds of hashtags, you want to think of what people might actually look up. So like I said, hashtag principal photography, it's probably not going to get looked up as much as hashtag production. You want to really think about that when you're using these more common hashtags to try to draw people in and spread the word of your film. You want to use ones that more people are going to look up most of the time, because those are the same thing. So
or that the right audience would look up too. You also have to take that into consideration. The people that I feel would be interested in this film, what kind of things would they look up? If I'm a similar audience, what kind of things do I look up?
Yeah, and principal photography probably is more used for actual people that are into filmmaking, that are doing it themselves. So it's probably not going to be your audience unless you're making a movie about filmmakers. That said, like Priscilla said, when you want to look up what maybe they use or how they look up words, maybe they are more specific and sophisticated and they want to use that wording when they're looking up that's your core audience. Well, then you do want to use principal photography. Otherwise, you want to use the more common phrasing to try to draw in the most audience. But you may be targeting a specific group of people, and that's why you use principal photography instead. I actually had that in my notes. So ultimately, you just want to be aware of what you are wanting and try to cater it around the kind of people that you're trying to attract. You may also want to include a hashtag or two which have something specific about your film or the production that people may care about. Hashtag women or woman director. Hashtag women filmmakers. Hashtag women in film. Hashtag behind the scenes. Hashtag film crew. Hashtag now screening.
We can
Hashtag,
only look up so many analytics. But most of us that are into film, we have friends or family that are also into film or that work in film. And it really does help for you to go around and be like, hey, you like these kinds of movies, right? What kind of stuff do you follow online? You know, like asking friends and family also really helps for you to gauge an idea. But the friends and family you think would be that target audience, otherwise you're just wasting your
yeah. And so like this is just hashtags for specific things about your film or that set you apart. So if you do have a woman director, there's plenty of people that might be interested in supporting a movie that has a woman director. And so it doesn't really have to do with the film itself. It has to do with the production of the film or behind the scenes type stuff of the film. All Black cast, hashtag Hispanic lead, hashtag woman lead. You know, all these things certain people want to support and want to show their support. And so they look it up to try to find movies or shows that have those things. Is it all Black crew? Is it an all Black cast? I want to support that. Or is it a Black director? Is it a woman director? Is it a Hispanic director? Whatever it may be, you can put those kind of details in as well so that people can find out that, so that people can support that because that's something they're looking up to support. You also want to use a hashtag or maybe two that's connected to the core theme of the film. So let's say the way we remember the things from our childhood, whatever the main theme of it could be used. If the main theme of it is about memories, hashtag memories, hashtag childhood memories, or more. There are many variations on these that you can do. So again, you want to think about which may be searched more. Hashtag memory or hashtag memories. Hashtag being a child or hashtag childhood, and etc. You have to think about that stuff when you're doing it. Just because it relates to the core of your film, there's still different ways you can word it and different ways you can organize it to make it be a different hashtag on its own. And then, of course, you can also go to these platforms and see which of these are looked up more so that you can do the one that has more people unless you really feel your core audience is going to look up the other one. For Twitter, the recommended number of hashtags is 3 per tweet. So you want to choose the best ones that connect with your film and each specific tweet. So if your tweet is about the pre-production phase, you could have one about pre-production, or you could have one about development or something, because you're showing the phase of that the film is in. And then you always want to use that one that connects specifically to your stuff across the board, which would be your title or that variation that we talked about. That's one you want to use in every single one so that people know that every post you're doing is about that specific film. If you're doing hashtags for a production company, you don't always have to have your production company hashtag in there, but you can, especially if you're trying to grow your audience. If you're talking about a specific film, you might want to swap that. And instead of talking about your production company, you can use your production company's social media to talk about your next project by using that specific title or variation of the title of your film. But you don't want to use too many in the same post because it can start to look like spam. And then it'll just draw people away. So if you see stuff like this, but it was on something like Twitter or it was on Facebook, and all it is a huge crap ton of hashtags to try to get people to look at it, it's actually going to turn people away more than it's going to have them look at the post or follow.
Even when it's people you know, I follow a bunch of friends that have like a 20, 30 hashtags in their thing. I'm just like, oh, I don't feel like reading all of this. And I scroll by.
Yeah. And so you want to be careful with that and make sure that you're only doing the specific ones. Each platform is going to have a certain number of hashtags that people are okay with, or at least, theorized based on data. Of like how many are okay for one platform over another. Like I said, for Twitter, they say about 3. And so you really want to use the ones that are going to be the best fit for your film and the specific tweet that you have. And then you can always switch out 1 or 2 of the hashtags with each tweet, but you want to be sure to keep the primary one in every tweet and post. Primary one being the title or the variation of that. And then the other 2 you can switch out to try to gain the other audience members, or specifically about whatever tweet you're doing and whatever you're posting about. But you always want to make sure to maintain that one primary one across the board. With most platforms, you want to try to keep the amount of hashtags used to a limit of around 5 or less, maybe up to 7 or 8. After that, it starts to lose viewership because it starts to look like spam. However, there is some data to suggest that certain platforms like Instagram actually work better with more hashtags. Instagram and TikTok are known to get more viewership with the more hashtags that are used. I think they put that number at like 11 or 15 or under. It's still not going to be a crap ton. Well, 11 is a lot, but eventually, even on these platforms, you can still lose viewership if you just do like 100. You probably won't even have enough space to do that, but just be careful about doing too many. And always look up the data of like the recommended number to use on each platform before you do it. Because, I wouldn't have guessed this, but Instagram and TikTok say to use 11 or more to get more viewership. So that's completely different compared to Facebook and Twitter, which say use, very few, 3 or less. Go ahead, Priscilla.
No, I was just gonna say, like, you also have to see about positioning, because from what I've seen, a lot of people will have like a space between their message and their hashtags so that it doesn't look too cluttered and too spammy. That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And have them in a specific order, because people might look at the hashtag, but not every single one. Or, to be quite frank, at least in my perspective, and what happens with me is those hashtags are more for the suggestion part of Instagram, like, hey, this, and then the hashtag or the suggestion, as opposed to someone going down and looking at every single hashtag. And that's why the more hashtags on Instagram are a little more effective, because they use those hashtags to suggest stuff to people. We all know, the bajillion suggested messages and the 3 from the people we actually follow. So that's more of the purpose of the hashtags on Instagram. At least it's been lately. I don't know if that's going to change, but that's what I've noticed, is the hashtags that I used to follow, or that I follow, or that seem like they would be interesting to me, are more recommended than or like the hashtags I follow, like, hey, because you like hashtag this, or oh, hashtag this, and then it shows then a random thing, and then you scroll down and read the hashtags. As opposed to Twitter, where when there's a tweet, you look at the hashtags and you're like, oh, what hashtags did they use?
Yeah, and that's why with those types of platforms like Facebook, okay, so Facebook says 1 to 2 hashtags do best, while Twitter says about 3, up to 3. And then, Instagram says 11 or more, as well as TikTok. And then, the other ones you have to look up yourself, but they all have different recommended amounts. And that's because like Priscilla said, they're used for different things. Like Instagram's using it to suggest pictures and profiles to people that aren't following that person currently. And Facebook and Twitter, they can use them to, somebody can follow a specific hashtag and then they can see your post when you have that hashtag. But Other times they're just used for people to read them, like actually read what the hashtag is. And so different platforms are using them for different things. The main purpose of hashtags is for people who want to follow that specific one to see all the posts that have that hashtag in it. But some people do use them for people to actually read it as if it were the post itself.
One recommendation that I would give, and actually it's also a request that I'm begging, is that if you want to put different hashtags, but make sure that it actually does have to do with your thing. And it's not like, well, this kind of sort of does, so I guess I can use it. Because that's how you get people, at least in my experience and for me, to stop following those hashtags or to report you as spam. Because I've followed hashtags for different film stuff, for different photography stuff, and I will see someone post that's kind of sort of, I guess, relevant, but not. And it will just annoy me and be like, you know what, I'm getting too many of these. I'm just going to not follow it anymore, or I'm just going to report this specific one as spam. So
or Priscilla sees the ones that are like, what, travel?
Oh, don't talk to me about the travel ones. They're basically just softcore OnlyFans pictures at this point. But yeah, so it's frustrating. But yeah, so just keep that in mind, to where, yes, you want different hashtags that are a little more specific and more niche, or that draw different kinds of audiences, but you also want to make sure you're not spamming them and it's actually relevant and not, well, this could sort of be kind of. No, don't do that.
Yeah. So I would say, like, always come up with the one that's specific to your project or your production company or you as a filmmaker, whatever you're going to use across the board on all of your social media posts, so people can find you easily. And then you can also use the ones that are a bit more generic or broad to try to draw in audience that's based on your film. And you can actually make a list of these before you start posting, especially if you're getting ready to do a marketing campaign, or you're coming up with a marketing plan. You can make a list of hashtags that you think relate to your thing. You can start doing research on it. And then you could maybe have a list of 20, 30, 50 hashtags. And then when you're posting, you can just go through that list and select the best ones that fit your post at the time. And your post at the time, really. Because then you can just keep going through the list and taking different ones each time you post a new thing. If you feel like there's 17 that fit it perfectly, then you can select through those so that you make sure you only do 3 to 4, or I guess 3 or less hashtags on a specific, like, Twitter tweet. Then you can select through the list of 50 that you made, or through the list of 17, and keep selecting the other ones so that you have equal amounts of posts that have both of those hashtags in it without making one post that has all of them.
Honey, I just want to make it clear, when I say the whole OnlyFans thing, I don't mean traveling with risque clothing. I mean literally hashtag travel, but it's in a house that looks like a normal house, and it's just a bikini pic or something. That's what I mean. Just making sure, I don't, explain it right.
Yeah, it's basically just like women trying to show off their butts and stuff. But they say hashtag traveling.
Even though they're not traveling. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so you always want to make sure it relates to your film in some way, or your film's message, or something within your film. Because there's plenty of things you can draw from messages, or even like side stories and plots and characters within your film. And you can still relate that to hashtags. But if they don't relate to anything in your film, first of all, why are you using it? Because you're not going to be getting the right kind of audience. So there's no point. Just because a million people follow hashtag food and your film has nothing to do with food, doesn't mean you want to try to get those million people to see your post, because then they'll come and see the film. We know that's not how it works. You have to market to the right people. And so using hashtags that have to actually do with your film is just going to be better for you in the long run than using ones that are broad but have nothing to do with what you're doing. And then for something like YouTube, I've seen people write the regular description in like, where you can write the description of the video. And then way farther down in the description, like so that it's hidden away from the audience, but also that it's attractive to YouTube's algorithm, they start putting some hashtags and things like that in it. Those algorithms always change. So if you put too many, YouTube might not like it and might think it's spam. But that is a way I've seen some people do it to where they get more viewership without making it look like spam to the actual person clicking the video. Because
Something that I've
the
seen
hashtags
that
are so far down the description that you have to actually scroll down to find them to see what is written there.
something that I've seen that has been really effective is like you normally hashtag your main thing, like something that's a little more unique and main. That's, for example, location. I've seen location a lot. Like YouTube will recommend me, hey, this YouTuber is from your area or near your area. Hey, this short film was shot near your area. And they will recommend me videos. And when I click on them, they will have like the little location or the little hashtag and then the name of the film and the location. So that's an interesting way to get like local people, or like specific genres or a specific topic that has to do with the film and that might get more people interested. And those hashtags tend to be, at least in my case, as someone who consumes a lot of YouTube, tends to be pretty effective, at least for me.
Yeah, so there's different plans, there's different, just like with marketing and marketing strategies, there's different strategies for using hashtags. It all encompasses into your marketing. Your marketing plan should have hashtags in mind because they are incredibly effective and useful if done right. But you want to make sure that you know how you're using them and why you're using them. And you might decide that you think food is the best way to get people because it has nothing to do with your film, but your film's a mockumentary. And so you're just kind of mocking posting in general. And so you might decide, oh, that's even better. Everyone will hate it. And then that'll make them want to watch it because I'm mocking everything. Whatever you think is best, just make sure you have a plan behind it and a reason so that you have a strategy for it. Even if that strategy might not work, at least you have that strategy and you know why you're doing it or know why you want to do it, rather than just randomly throwing hashtags on the post to see what sticks. But usually the best approach with hashtags is mixing specific hashtags with the more generic or broad ones that have something to do with your film. Those are usually the best things to do for filmmakers. Specific one for your production company or your film, and then the more generic ones that have to do with it. So again, let's say our film with the way we remember the things from our childhood. That's a long title, so we'll say that we used the way we remember. That's how we're going to use our title. That's the hashtag we're going to use across all of our social media, the way we remember film. Let's say the way we remember film. That's our specific hashtag to our film. And then for the more generic ones, we're going to use childhood memories. We're going to use childhood memories. We're going to use those across all of our social media as well, but they're a bit more generic, but they still have to do with our film. And maybe there's, some kind of love story within the film. We could say like teenage love or, teenage relationships, something like that to draw that audience in as well on some of our posts. But again, those are more generic. They have to do with what's inside the film, but they don't have to do with the title of the post itself. And so we'll use those less often, and we'll make sure to use hashtag the way we remember or way we remember film across the board in every single post we do. From Collaborator blog, they have a few that they say are the best ones to use for indie film. Obviously, for indie films, actually putting indie film on there for your hashtag, that's one of the best ways for people to know that it's an indie film. Some people really want to support independent films. And so that hashtag is used a lot. And it automatically separates you from big budgeted Hollywood movies because Now people know it's an indie film. If they're looking up indie films to try to support the newest ones coming out, they have a better chance of seeing yours. Filmmaking or filmmakers. I don't know what Filmmakers Friday is, but whatever, they say that's one of the better ones. Support indie film. So you can have people that don't just want to look up indie films, they're actually specifically trying to support them. It's probably a lot less common than the more common indie film hashtag, but you might draw in the audience that's specifically trying to look to support independent films. Crowdfunding, if you're doing that. Script chat, if you're writing a script, you want some people to give you feedback and things like that, you might do that to get feedback or help people write, or get people to help write your script, things like that. Film curious, women in film, the genre, whatever genre you're in. If you're doing an action film, if you're doing a drama, comedy, hashtag comedy, hashtag drama, or you could do hashtag indie comedy, hashtag indie drama, and kind of combine the two. You don't do indie film, you do indie comedy. So you're only getting the people that are going to look up specifically independent films that are comedies. And that's a way that you can combine 2 in 1, so you can use those across the board without making a post have too many hashtags in it. So you can also think about that. Hashtag your movie title or a variation on it. I've already talked about that. And those are the ones they say are the best ones. This, they show like the number of posts. They say you can also use popular hashtags list to get an idea of which hashtags. Oh, this is from cherrydeck.com. So you can also use popular hashtags to get an idea of which hashtags are overly competitive and should therefore maybe be avoided when tagging your images or your posts. Cinematography for Instagram. It's very popular. Cinematographers, photographers, videographers, they all use Instagram a lot. And so they post what they're doing. I'm a cinematographer. This is cinematography. And they show off their cinematography through Instagram. And so you can see there's a bunch of posts that have that.
That's a really good thing to be specific as well. If you're following, or if you want to be a part, like put a post and hashtag that's about cinematography or about photography, use a little more. I would recommend to use, yes, the cinematography one, but also a few more specific ones, because those are the ones that tend to be spammed to hell. Like photography ones and cinematography ones, they constantly have spam or posts that have nothing to do with it, and it's really frustrating for people that are looking for it. So at least in my experience, I've been trying to follow a few more smaller groups or a few more specific ones that are cinematography and different styles of cinematography, or cinematography plus this,
And that way you
really
can be more specific with it and have people that are specifically looking up your kind of cinematography. Is it outdoor stuff? Is it indoors? Is it for a film? Is it, are you calling it cinematography and really you're just making a video? Because that's probably what people are doing, honestly. A lot of videographers, when they first start out, they just call everything cinematography. And it isn't always the case, but they're going to use that hashtag anyway. And you can look up this data and see how many posts have that hashtag attached to it. And that way you can see how much competition there is. If there's a lot of competition, if there's a lot of posts that use that, then you might not want to. Just because there's, let's say for filmmaking, there's 80,000 people that follow that hashtag, but then we find out there's 10,200,000 posts that use that hashtag. Just because there's a lot of people following the hashtag doesn't mean they're going to ever see our post, because we're buried in 10,200,000 other posts. So looking up this data is also very important, not just how many people follow a hashtag, but how many posts include that hashtag in it. So I would recommend, looking that up and seeing, and you might also see that there's not many posts for something, and you might see how many people follow a hashtag, and you might see that that's a pretty good number. If there's 200 people following Insta filmmaker, but there's only 2,000 posts with that hashtag, then that might be a better way to go about doing it than just doing filmmakers, even if there's like 60,000, if there's 2 million posts with that hashtag. So you have to kind of do the math to figure out which one you think is better, which ratio you'd rather go with. You might also decide, oh, 2,000 people is nothing. I don't want to use that for one of my hashtags. So I'm trying to draw an audience in. That might be smart. It might not be. It just depends on how many people you think you'll reach through this hashtag instead. And as you can see, a lot of these are basically the same thing. Filmmakers, filmmakers life, filmmakers world. Those two are pretty much the same thing, but they're different hashtags. And so they have a different amount of posts with them, and they have a different number of followers for each of those hashtags. So every word, every different spelling you do, it's going to change what that hashtag is and who follows it, how many people follow it, how many people use it in their own posts. So always do the research for it and do the math to figure out what you think is the best route to take. And those are just for the more common ones. Obviously, the specific one, your title, it's probably never been used before. If it has, that's actually another thing. If you have a film title that is common, like The Interrogation, and you do The Interrogation film for a hashtag, but I look that up and I find out that that thing has posts from a week ago, I might not want to use that anymore and find a different thing to use for my main hashtag to represent my film because others are using that. So look up, if you have a common name especially, look up and see if that hashtag has been used. And if you can make a separate one that has only to do with yours, or if it's something that was like super old, like, oh, 2 years ago, there was a film that used the same hashtag, but nobody's posting about it anymore, you should be okay. But if you find that people are currently posting about it or posting with it a few weeks ago, you might want to change it to make sure that it's more specific to your thing only, so people don't get confused and try to look you up, but find out or find that other person and think it's you, or think, if there's another film with the same title, they might watch that film instead because they were trying to find yours, but you're both using the same hashtag. So keep that in mind as well. But other than that, does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about hashtags?
Oh, let me see. Let's see about hashtags. You had mentioned something about movie titles and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just have a thing. I'm kind of going off topic, but I just have this thing about titling your movie like, I don't know. Like when I was in film school, like that seemed to be the thing. Like everybody, like whatever the movie was about, it's like they had to make that the title of it. Like if your movie was about selling pencils, and then the movie would be The Pencil, or
Pencil
something.
seller.
Yeah, pencil seller. It's like my biggest thing was like get some creativity and stuff like that. So all the stuff you were saying about having generic names with that, with the hashtag, it makes a lot of sense because it's like if you have a movie that's called The School Bus, like like how do you expect it to generate any type of search engine with just going so generic? So that that's one thing to think about when you're titling your films. Be more creative with it. And I sound like an ass saying it, but it's the same. It's just I see so many movies, The Asshole, or the like just the THE. It's just like always got to put that in front of it. The this, the that.
You're talking about generic titles, or you're talking about just?
I'm talking about like well, yeah, generic titles, I guess you can call them. Or just like they just whatever it's something that you're expecting. Like if you make a movie called like Child's Play, You know, they call it child's play, you know what I mean? But they could have called it the doll, you know, but they didn't. They called it child's play, you know. But yeah, and then I think you guys also touched on how many hashtags, because I see a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people post things, and then at the bottom is like a C or a paragraph of nothing but hashtags. It's just like, well, which one dominates the other one? You know, if you have like all these hashtags in there.
Oh, I've seen that where it's just like a sentence and then the rest is just hashtags, but it's like a whole two paragraphs.
Yeah, I've seen people like create like paragraphs with just hashtags and stuff like that. It's just hashtag film, hashtag cinema, hashtag the filmmaker, hashtag director of photography, hashtag cinematographer, hashtag camera, hashtag red camera, hashtag black magic pocket cinema, like just all these hashtags. And it's just like, doesn't that like, you know, this is where I question that. Doesn't that kind of like water down like your original, whatever it is that you're trying to get noticed? Because you have all these.
I think it depends on what it is, but I would say yeah. Now, if it's like a variation on it and you're using it for something like Instagram, then maybe not, because they say, you know, a lot works. But if it's something like Facebook or Twitter and you're like camera, red camera, black magic, it just looks like you're desperate, I would say.
That's what it is. You said it, desperate. That's what it looks like.
That's how I see it when I see people do that. I'm just like, man, you're desperate to get people to see what you're talking about.
I try to figure out the algorithm for YouTube, because I'll put on there, like I've talked about this before too. Like when I post, like I have a video on my YouTube channel. It's about it's titled Rode NTG2 sample audio. And I got so many views off of that because people, you know, want to see the microphone is all about and stuff. So I got so many, but like any other, like, you know, original content that I put out there, like, you know, I don't get anything because I don't pay YouTube to put it out there like that. So like, I started like making like little short videos and just like putting titling the videos like, you know, Black Magic Cinema sample footage, you know, and I get so many those because people are, you know, it's the name that's generating the views, you know what I mean? But I'll try to mix it up. Like if I do a movie and I shoot it on a Black Magic, I'll try to maybe hashtag that in there depending on what it's about. But that's just YouTube though, so you know, I kind of get viewers from, you know, people that are looking for Black Magic. They might stumble upon it though. But I think I do know, like if your title isn't specifically, like if the first words aren't Black Magic, then it's going to be like at the bottom. Like you search Black Magic and then all the stuff with that in there is going to come first, and then you know how when you scroll down all the way to the bottom and there's like that second portion, like there's like a second portion with like videos that have nothing to do, like unrelated videos.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, this might be something suggested.
So it's hashtag, but then it's also has a lot to do with what do you call it, like what you title your video or something like that. But then it also,
YouTube also, I don't know 100% on this, but I think that they also go through the video and try to what's it called? They try to hear what you're saying basically and see if you're actually talking about that thing or not.
I believe it.
No, like they try, like, because Google, you know, they have that listening thing now, and so I'm pretty sure YouTube uses like, do they even say Black Magic Camera in this video? Let's go through it and try to translate and see, like take it from digital to writing it out in our own like algorithm and see if they say it, and if they do, then we'll recommend it to the people.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, so the next thing we're talking about is giveaways, specifically competitions or contests, as well as sweepstakes. So this stuff comes from Morgan Stradling. It's letter B in the syllabus. And the video is called Giveaways versus Contests versus Sweepstakes versus Lotteries versus Raffles. What's the difference? Raffles. So when people say giveaway, it is usually an umbrella term used to say that they're doing either a competition or contest, which are the same thing, or a sweepstakes. Normally, when people say giveaway, what they most likely are meaning is a sweepstakes, because a contest or a competition, people have to try to win the prize, whereas a sweepstakes, it's a random draw. But people typically don't like using the word or the term sweepstakes because it puts a negative connotation on it sometimes. So instead they say giveaway, especially on an independent level, people, or just like a freelance level, people will use giveaway more often. What they usually mean though is a sweepstakes. So a sweepstakes is a giveaway where the winner is selected solely based on chance. So out of 100 entries, maybe one will randomly be selected as the winner. 100 people entered, one person's going to be randomly selected. It could be more than that, it could be less, depending on how many people entered, but it's, one or more winners, depending on how many you choose to win, are just selected at random. Entrants can have only one entry or chances for multiple entries, but only one entry will be randomly selected to win. So in a sweepstakes, you could have people be able to enter multiple times, but that doesn't mean they're going to be chosen more than once. Obviously, only one of their entries will be a winner if they win at all. One thing you have to do when running a sweepstakes is to be sure that everyone has a fair chance to enter and that there is no purchase necessary. So you might see something like comment to earn an entry, share for an entry, follow our newsletter, and he'll be automatically entered into our sweepstakes, and more. Those are all fine. But if you say something like buy a ticket now to be entered into our sweepstakes, that is not allowed and is illegal. Sweepstakes have to have no purchase necessary for entering. So you can't have it. You also can't have it be something that's very difficult to do. So following our newsletter to be automatically entered, that's not difficult. All I have to do is put in my email and my name, maybe my zip code, and then press a button. But if you were like, write a paragraph that we'll use in our newsletter, that becomes more of a contest. And because you're not selecting it based on the best one for the winner, you can't qualify it, you can't count it as a contest. And so it becomes a lottery, and that is illegal. You can't do a lottery unless you have certain licenses and stuff for it. So sweepstakes have to have no purchase necessary, at least for the initial entry. According to Morgan Stradling, with sweepstakes, you can have optional or bonus ways to enter for more entries that require buying something, but you always have to have the initial one be a free entry. So you could do, just click this, fill out this little form and you can enter our contest. All you have to do is put in your name, your number, your zip code, and you'll be entered into our your email so we can tell you if you won. And you'll be entered into our contest, or our sweepstakes, I mean. And then you can have also, after that initial one, if you'd like to earn 50 more entries, you can buy a ticket, or you can, do this other thing that takes more work or takes more time or money. Those are okay. It gets a little iffy based on your state. So always look up your specific state laws, because the state, federal, and local laws all have to be accounted for and taken into consideration before you can do something like that. Not every state is going to allow you to have the option to get bonus entries by paying or by doing a competition type of thing, but some will. So, don't just take my word for it. Don't take whatever this person's word for it. Make sure you're looking it up yourself. We're not lawyers. So I don't know for certain especially based on where you're at, what country you're in, or what state you're in. It's all going to matter when you're trying to do these kinds of giveaways. So always take that into consideration, but usually you can have optional ones that will incentivize people to maybe buy a ticket or buy our merchandise, buy our hat, and you'll get 50 more entries, 10 more entries, or for every $1 you spend, you'll get another entry into the sweepstakes. I've seen plenty like that. So those are probably allowed, but you just gotta, again, make sure that you look up your local laws. And no matter what, you always have to make sure that the first entry has no work, like no real work or money required, no purchase necessary to enter. And it has to be available to everybody so that everybody can enter if they'd like for free, very easily. That's how you have to do a sweepstakes. From rtm.com, like I was saying earlier, they say when running a sweepstakes, you need to give out a local, state, and federal compliant official list of rules for the sweepstakes. So that is one of the laws that you have to abide by. You have to make sure that it is federally, locally, and by the state compliant. The official list of rules for the sweepstakes. So that everybody who wants to can read what the rules are and see how they can win. Check social media policies also for their distinct rules and policies on running and promoting a sweepstakes on their platform, because they will all have their own rules associated to that. They might say that you are not allowed to promote yourself with a sweepstakes on their platform. And you don't want to be kicked off the platform, so be sure to look up that information as well if you are trying to post about it on different social media platforms. Also, a privacy policy is required to disclose how personal information will be used or what its intended use is. So if you're just trying to get people aware of your project, you're trying to get emails and zip codes to see who is interested in this sweepstakes because it has to do with my film or my production company, and so I'm trying to get a gauge of my target audience, then you have to let people know that is its intended use. We're going to use this information to better target our audience, blah, 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 blah. And it has to all be like legally done. So, you can't just say something like that. You have to make sure it's legally abiding. Depending on the prize amount, certain states require registration and bonding, which bonding is ensuring the prize goes to the proper winner. It's usually for higher amounts. They usually don't care if it's something like, I think 500 or less is something they don't really care that much about. But once it starts getting up higher numbers, like if you're giving away a car, if you're giving away something expensive, then they're more strict with the rules on it. And they need to make sure that you're actually giving it to a winner and that you're selecting that winner purely from chance at random with some kind of random generator or whatever. Whatever the selection process is, you're not selecting it based on something that you have like about that person or that you like about their entry, because that becomes a contest. You're purely selecting them from chance, from luck. That's what makes it a sweepstakes. Also, some states are stricter than others. So this is why some sweepstakes runners will exclude certain states from participating. Normally, I think it's like New York and LA or California as a whole. I don't know. But I do know that I see a lot of those kind of competitions exclude those states because they have a lot more strict rules with them. So be aware of that. You might be able to run a sweepstakes and try to give it out to everybody in the whole country, but you'll have to do a lot more regulation type stuff to make sure you can run in each and every state. And so instead, you might want to decide to exclude the ones that are more strict so you can still do your sweepstakes and just not have to do all the legal stuff that you'd have to do if you were trying to run a sweepstakes in something like New York. Also, according to RTM.com, anything that requires time, effort, or money can constitute a sweepstakes as an illegal lottery. So like, be careful with that, because the more money, the bigger prize that you're giving out, even if it's small, if it requires time, effort, and money, it can still constitute it as an illegal lottery. So you could get in trouble. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take this as word verbatim, but some things, when it's like a smaller prize, they're not really going to care. But that doesn't mean that you want to just ignore all the rules and all the laws just because you're not giving out a huge prize. So just be careful, because you could get in trouble even if you're only giving out $1 or something that's worth $1 as the prize. Or even if you're not even giving money, maybe your sweepstakes is just that you have a platform that has a lot of followers and you're going to promote their channel, or you're going to promote their account. You know, I've seen sweepstakes like that from bigger influencers and stuff. And if you're not following the rules and the laws with something like that, even though it's a small prize, not really monetarily, you can't really quantify a monetary value to it, because you're not really sure how much that's going to be worth. It could still get you in trouble if you don't follow the laws when you're making it or when you're running it. So just be careful when running a sweepstakes. If a sweepstakes is asking users to post a photo on social media for instant entry, it takes effort, which could be violating that rule. So it takes effort because now they have to post a photo to try to be entered. That's, again, it's not exactly a contest, but it takes effort. So it could be seen as a lottery instead. So always have a very simple, easy way for people to enter first and foremost. And then you might be able to have additional entries through photos, if you're trying to get people to post photos connecting to the film, or, you know, with the costume of the main character in your movie, and trying to spread the word of your film that way, which I've seen plenty of films do, and they can do it. Again, you just have to be careful with how you do it and follow the law. If you don't want to give out multiple entries, you can also have what's called an AMOE, and that is an alternative method of entry. So for example, you could say whoever posts a photo is automatically entered, but there's also an online form someone can enter and fill out to enter instead. That way, you're still compliant with the law by offering an easy way, as well as the way that takes more effort. And so if people want to, they can do the photo thing instead. And then you could also say, but if you don't want to do that, all you have to do is, you know, fill out this little form and press the button, you're entered in. And I've seen plenty of them do that as well. Honestly, I've seen some from like bigger companies like Nabisco and whatever else. When they're running sweepstakes, sometimes they'll do it where they're like, post the photo and, you know, put this hashtag in it. And then like very like small or farther down or kind of hidden away almost, they're like, also you can sign up here, as if they're trying to like hide it. And so, you know, it's kind of like skirting the line of legality in that instance, but I've seen it done. I don't know if that makes it illegal or not. I'm not sure, because they are technically still following the law. But I would just say, you know, as an independent person, as a freelance type of person that doesn't have a big company or lawyers attached to you to fight a lawsuit in any case, just be careful with that and try not to like hide it away as well. I don't know. I would say try not to do that.
You don't want to come off as scummy. If people notice that, you're going to get a bad reputation either way. Even if it's technically legal or whatever, it's still kind of scummy. People will notice that and they'll keep that in mind, and that'll give you a bad reputation.
Honestly, not really, because people wouldn't know that is most people don't know that that's illegal.
But it would still be like, oh, I have to go all the way down here, and there's this thing that they didn't mention. It still is like, I don't know. It feels scammy. You're a new company. You're small. People might not know. It's always good to try to do the best you can with these things.
Yeah, I would agree. And so I'm just saying, like, I've seen it done. Doesn't mean that you should do it too, is basically what I'm trying to say. But legally, technically speaking, it could mean that you followed the law. So it doesn't necessarily mean you would get in trouble, but it means that you could possibly get sued or get in trouble for it and have to fight either in court or out of court, trying to make your point that, oh no, I added it in, I did follow the law. And you don't want to get into that situation because it's costly and time consuming. So again, I'm not a lawyer, do whatever you want, but I would say be careful with that and try to follow the law as much as you can. Also, depending on the price, like I said, you may also have to include information on taxes and 1099 forms if the winner chooses to accept the prize. 1099 forms are needed for anybody who gets $600 or more within 1 year from you. You have to send them a 1099 form during tax season or before it, I guess. And so if you're giving somebody a $600 prize or more, then the same thing. It's basically like giving them $600 in cash. Doesn't always have to be cash. It could just be worth that amount. And you still have to do that. And if that prize is worth that much or more, you also have to include information on how the taxes have to be handled in the official rule set, like how it's going to play out. So keep all that in mind. Winners are often required to be released, like their name and their state. So they often have to sign a release that says, when they win, they have to sign a release that says you are allowed to release their name, their what state they're from, and sometimes a photo, depending on the state. Some states require the person's photo to be shown for the winner. Winners usually also have to sign an affidavit signing that they understand the legal obligations of taxes and prize value, as well as give permission for their name and info to be released upon accepting the prize. If you're doing a giveaway of a t-shirt or something, you don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff because it's more for the bigger prizes. But if it's an all expense paid 2-day trip to a film premiere, that value will often put it in these required law areas where you have to do a lot to consider all of these things to make sure you're compliant with the laws. So typically that's why you see a lot of these people just doing these giveaways and they're not really doing all these rules. It's because certain states don't care if it's under a certain value. But again, check your state, see what the laws are. If you're going to run a sweepstakes, it's based on luck, based on chance. Make sure you are doing it right in your state. And that you are going to do it right across other states if you're trying to do it nationally. So back to Morgan Stradling. She says, with a contest or a competition, which are just two words for the same thing, there is a winner based on skill or effort, and they are not based on luck or chance. So instead of a participant selected at random, like a sweepstakes, winners are selected based on merit. The winners can either be selected by you, the brand owner, or chosen or narrowed down by a public voting element. So you could say, hey guys, vote for your, everybody post photos that have to do something with the film. And then, everybody select the ones that you like best and upvote them. And the ones that have the highest votes, we'll take the 5 that have the most votes by the end of the month and select our favorite. That is a contest and that is allowed. And then that person will win the prize, the one who we select. Or you could say, The one that has the most votes by the end of the month wins. And then you're letting it be totally up to the public. And that depends on if you want to do it or not. I've heard some people say they don't like doing contests like that because it just makes the people who have the biggest following always win, because they just tell their following to upvote them. And, they have a bigger following, so more of them will do it. But you might want to do that. It just depends, I guess. Gabe said, can you use a donation to enter a sweepstakes? Like, can you say donate to us and you'll get into
Yeah,
a
you remember? Yeah, you remember you showed us the it's like a GoFundMe. No, not a GoFundMe. I forgot.
Patreon?
But yeah. Not Patreon. It was the other one. Because that's what they're for. Like, doing fundraising. And you showed us that movie, and then they had like different like levels. And
Oh,
I think
Kickstarter?
yes, Kickstarter. And I remember one of them was, make a certain donation. It's still a good, they would still, give a donation, but hey, it's a sweepstake as well.
Yeah, I know. So you can't do a sweepstakes
No?
with that because that
Oh,
would
you,
be
you just said
giving
all that.
money. But
Yeah.
certain
True.
states and stuff, you could say, you can enter this sweepstakes by filling out this form. And also you can get 50, 100, 1,000 extra entries by donating this amount of money to us. In some states that's allowed. Again, you'd have to look that up. I'm not going to say for sure one way or the other. But that is the way to work around it usually when you're doing the sweepstakes.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For the contest, you have to actually select somebody based on skill. So something like that wouldn't work for a contest. So it would have to be a
Yeah,
sweepstakes, but
right.
it would be like, I don't know, maybe you could say a contest, who can give the most money? But I don't
That's
I
right.
don't know if that's
There are
allowed or
people
not.
out there that want to give out money.
I'm not sure the legalities of that. So
Yeah, true.
whoever gives the most money wins.
Right, that's yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, so photo
Alright.
contests, scripts or essay contests to see if someone can figure something out first or get an answer right first. Like, how many times is the word memory said in the film? So now if we're talking about our childhood memories film, how many times is the word memory said in the film? Whoever can figure it out first wins. You get a lot of people that might want to go see it and maybe see it multiple times to try to pay close attention and write down every time the word memory is said, so they can win that contest. And so you can figure out more, and different contests to get people involved and people interested in watching the film or buying tickets or whatever it may be. And that's okay, as long as they're chosen based on some kind of skill or merit. Contests have a majority of the same rules and laws as sweepstakes. Obviously it's not all exactly the same because a contest can be based on merit while a sweepstakes is based on luck. But for like the official rules and like signing off somebody like for an affidavit saying that they're okay to have their information released, a lot of that stuff is very similar between the two. I won't say this definitively as it depends on the state and certain laws, but generally contests can charge an entry fee so long as winners are not chosen by chance or at random. So you see some of these contests that are script contests. Enter your script and we'll have a panel of judges judge the scripts, pick out our favorite, and then that person will win a prize of some sort that will help produce the film or will give money, a grant, that kind of stuff. I've seen that done. Again, I'm not going to say definitively that you can do that too. It might depend on the state. It might depend on certain laws. And it also might depend on if you have like a license for that or something. There might be certain permissions that you have to be granted before you can run a contest that is paid for by the contestants. But I do believe that is able to be done. So just be careful. I'm not a lawyer. but I have seen stuff like that, and I think that it's okay, legally speaking, as long as you're following the rest of the laws. But if they have to pay and are chosen at random, then it becomes an illegal.
This goes without saying, but do your own research beforehand. And just because every state is different, every region is different, every type of competition is different. We're giving generalized data, like information that we found, but at the end of the day, everything is going to be different depending on your state, depending on what kind of competition, depending on what kind of thing you're giving out. So that is going to require you to make your own research, do your own research.
Yeah. But yeah, if they have to pay to be entered and they're chosen at random, it becomes an illegal lottery. Think about the lottery that's in every state, and the national lottery. You have to pay $2 for a ticket, an entry, basically, to be entered into the chance of winning. And sometimes you don't even win because lotteries don't have to have a winner. So those are very strictly regulated, and you can't, if you're running a sweepstakes that needs people to pay, you're not running a sweepstakes. You're running a lottery, and you're running an illegal lottery because you don't have the permissions and the permits and whatever to run that lottery. And so you're running an illegal lottery, which obviously is illegal. So be careful with that. With any of these,
Hence the name illegal, an illegal.
with any of these, like we are already saying, don't go by what I or anyone else is saying verbatim. Always check the rules and laws, because rules and laws, even if I went over the rules and laws of your state right now, and you're going to run a sweepstakes or a contest 2 years from now, rules and laws change, and they're very state specific, and they depend on several factors, like Priscilla's saying, like the overall value of the prize, what the prize is that you're giving out, how many people are entering this competition, where it's located. There's so many different things that variables that go into it that make it different, that even if I went over all the rules and laws right now, it doesn't mean that you should go back to that, listen to it, and just take it as is and say, oh, that's what works, that's what doesn't. Because by then there could be a new law that's put out that says, oh, you're not allowed to do this certain thing. And so you always want to look up your laws before you run a contest and a sweepstakes. Even if you've run one before, you want to check out the laws again, just to double check, make sure that that nothing's changed. Even if you followed the laws to the first contest or the first sweepstakes, but now you're going to run another one, just double check, make sure that there's nothing new in there that you have to follow, no new requirements that you have to do. That way you can still make sure that you are following the laws and abiding by the rules of your state, your local area, and the federal laws as well. So both lotteries and raffles are illegal because both are pay to play, with a prize involved and winners randomly selected. Lotteries, there might not be any winners, while raffles always have a winner. But it doesn't matter, both are illegal unless you get certain permits and stuff, so you can't just run those because they're both based on chance. The only legal thing you can do is sweepstakes. That doesn't require people to pay to enter. So sweepstakes are good for generating awareness. They have higher participation due to lack of entry barriers. So they're calling it giveaways right here, but luck dominant, which means they're based on luck, not based on any skill. They have a higher participation of people doing it because it's not as hard to do, it's easy to enter. Chance is the winning criteria, which means, they're just chosen by chance, randomly selected. You might have a random number generator that gives a number out and you just select that entrant. Oh, entrant 375, that guy, they want, that girl, whatever. It's also free and does not involve an entry fee. Where contests are skill dominant. You have to be picked and selected to win. They have lower participation because it's higher entry barriers. People have to work to do it. They have to, take time or put in money or something to be able to win. If it's a script contest, then obviously they have to write a script and make sure it's good before entering. Performance is the winning criteria. The person that they vote is best, whatever judges or panel, that'll be in the official rules that you give out saying how people are going to be selected to win. So people will be able to know if they want to read through that thing, or they can just enter without reading the rules or the official rules of how it's going to work, and just enter it, which a lot of people do, obviously, but it still means there's less people doing it because there's more work involved. And it may involve an entry fee or not. Some contests do, some don't. Like I said, you might need certain permits to run a contest that needs an entry fee, or you might not. It depends on where you are and what the prize is, how much it's worth. Sweepstakes are good for generating awareness about your film or brand and can help grow understanding of who your audience may be or what market segments are working. So you can see, oh, I'm trying to do a sweepstakes giveaway that gives out something to do with my film. My film's about sci-fi. I'm going to give away one of the props. So I think people that are interested in sci-fi are going to want to enter this giveaway, this sweepstakes. And then, I see a lot of people's emails and zip codes and whatever age, whatever information I require for them to enter that giveaway, that sweepstakes. And I start to compile a list of, okay, I was right. My target audience is this, or, oh, never mind. I thought it would be this type of target audience, but the people entering are this group of people. They're this age. They're different than what I thought. So now I'm compiling a list of what my target audience might be, so that when I come out with my film, I can market it directly to the people who were interested in this sweepstakes. And so it can help you figure out your target audience better, and it can help generate awareness for your film because more people are going to enter it, and then they'll be aware of your film in general. They might not go see it, but they'll be aware of it. Whereas contests, they're good to get your fan base involved in your brand or film, and can be used to reach your audience's audience to help grow your own. Because now your audience, whoever sees that you're running a contest, might post about it or might try to get their fan base involved, people who follow them. Hey, I have this contest. They say, it's one of the reasons why it's good to do public voting and stuff, because you can get more people to share it with others, because then your contest entrants are trying to get people who follow them to help promote their own thing within the contest, which makes your, whatever the contest is about, which would be your film or your production company, makes that all the people that help them aware of your thing. So it can help spread the word like that as well. Otherwise, it's a way for people to just maybe discuss, hey, I entered this contest, I did this thing, check it out. And it can help spread awareness through their audience like that. Either way, competitions and contests are the same thing. They're just different words. However, calling it a competition can sometimes increase competitiveness over calling it a contest, which is seen as a bit gentler. So that's why you'll usually see contest over competition. Competition just brings out a little bit more of a competitive nature in the people entering it than contest, for whatever reason, just psychological. And that is why you'll usually see contests instead, because they don't want people to get too competitive with it. The main reason you're doing it is to get people aware of your thing. So unless your movie is about a competition between people, some kind of maybe fighting competition or racing competition or whatever, you probably don't want to put competition as your wording for that contest based on skill. So either way, you can utilize sweepstakes and contests, and or you can use one or the other, or you can try to use both to help engage and excite your fan base and audience, as well as grow your recognition through people who aren't already following you for your film or your company, to help build your brand, build your film's awareness, and hopefully sell more tickets and get more people interested in seeing it. Other than that, does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about contests and or sweepstakes?
Yes. Everybody, you guys can all DM me your Cash App for blessings.
No way.
Prayer chain. Prayer chain. If everyone donates $1 a month.
Competitions are pretty. You just gotta be. You gotta learn how to weed out the scammers that are out there. They're all over the place, and what people don't realize is that you know there's two different revenues. There's the filmmaking side, and then there's the actual film festival side. Like you don't really, anybody can make a film. I mean, it's hard. I mean, we did discuss film festivals and stuff, but I've seen a lot of festivals that random guys were just like, hey, I just want to do this film festival, and you know they charge people to submit. They rent out a theater and they have this festival, and people will submit thinking like, okay, I made it into this festival, when in actuality it's not really, you know, a thing. It's just
It's in someone's back.
yeah, somebody was just bored. I just want to do this festival. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just something to think about. You know,
Something called like the Fire Festival, or I can't remember, but it was something that was basically a scam. But the people didn't actually get in trouble because they legally followed the law.
Yeah, there's like multiple documentaries about that.
there's a couple
There
of
was a
them.
music festival though, but yeah, it was.
Was that
pretty.
was that what you're talking about?
What?
Rule?
Oh, the whole Ja Rule. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
He was a part of it.
they're thinking they're gonna make their career and stuff on the show, and one big scam or something like that.
Technically, even the bigger people didn't know it was a scam. There were like whole supermodels that were paid to go there. I think they even mentioned Blink-182 at one point, said it was going to perform or something. So,
I know P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, he didn't get any trouble, but you know, there people were putting him on blast because he had his, you know, they compete. It's like this competition, and then they at the end he gives, you know, he signed you to his record label or something. But it comes to find out, like, he signs people, but then he lets, like, the contract was so sketchy, like, you know, like, so like they did all the work for the show, like he didn't pay them for the show. That's the thing everybody was upset about. They're not even paying them for the show.
I mean, if we're being completely honest, all of these competition shows are sketchy as heck. Everyone who's talked about it, even like the bigger ones, like The Voice or America's Got Talent, you will have like, contracts, yes, but you'll have a bunch of conditions and a bunch of stuff. So there's no such thing as like a no strings attached, completely marvelous, perfect competition of anything.
That's a good example. You brought up American Idol, and I'm always questioning. My mother watches it a lot. And I always ask her, I'm like, yo, where are all these people? Like, you know, the show's been running for so long. And I'm like, you know, of course, you know, people got to win year after year after year. People win. And I'm like, yo, where are they at? You know,
well, a lot of it is their management, because the recording company, I think when Simon Cowell was a part of it, it was his recording company, which is Psych Records. So it's the recording company sucks at marketing. And that's a lot of the time why and their contract is very much like, we're going to choose your first single and we're going to choose which direction your first album goes in. And that is how it ends up being that a lot of the runner-ups were more successful than the actual winners.
Well, that's
they
what
were signed by other ones.
we're trying to figure out, and that's what, you know, that's where the lesson is. Like, we gotta like be very, very vigilant on this stuff, because I'm under the impression now, like after all these years, that literally like, human trafficking these winners, because you don't
Oh
see,
my God.
you know what I mean? Like, what was the last one that did one? The girl, Jordan, whatever, Jordan.
Jordan Sparks? Oh, her album just flopped. I used to follow her on Instagram, I think. She got married, she had a kid. She had, basically her career, her first album was successful, I think, and then the second one was kind of meh. And then the record label, I don't know if they dropped her because the numbers weren't as big as they thought, or she left because of creative control. I know that's what happened with JoJo, and it was like a whole thing.
To see like the contracts that you're signing, that when they sign them, win the competition, like what's happening? Like, are you signing this deal where so you can only associate with American Idol brand? You can't go over there with PDD Records or any other records. You only got to associate because they don't really think aside from that album that comes out, and you're like, oh, you're happy for them, and then they just disappear. You know what I mean?
Or a lot of them will do where we control your most successful singles, masters when you leave our label after the 5 contract. They'll lock them in for 5 contracts, but they'll do a crap job at marketing them to where the first will be successful and then the others will just flop, and then they're like, hey, you're not profitable, we'll leave you.
Yeah, I mean,
no competition is perfect.
There's a lot of things, a lot of shady contracts, and a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't really know about, like the whole Britney Spears incident. Oh my God.
Yeah, and those are big companies, so you can only imagine how little competitions, little contests, those you need to be even more vigilant for.
Yeah, you should definitely, especially like Brian was saying, the random like script or festival or contests that come out that are from nowhere, and if you look into the details, that share any information who's running it.
They're super new.
Yeah, like they're either never heard of, they've never done anything, or it's just like they don't even try to show who they are. Really?
Or they have some association, because that's a thing too, where you'll see, oh, this artist or that actor, or this director, but it's a director and an actor who hasn't worked in like 10 years. So unfortunately, that's also something that might be a little sketchy, because like, you don't know, they might just be trying to make money or trying to up their careers. You don't know how profitable or how actually legitimate it can actually be.
Yeah, I mean, and they did do a thing. Oh, the director's gonna be there via Zoom. You know what I mean? He's gonna be.
It's like, oh, well, that's not really that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't tell you that until you get to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
He said he'd be here.
and entering in the contest, be careful with that, guys, and also sweepstakes. Those, I mean, obviously, those are for collecting data. They're for collecting information about you, about who's interested in their product, their service, or whatever it is. That's what those are for. They collect emails, names, and zip codes, and maybe more information depending on what they need you to sign. It's good for you when you're trying to run one, because you do want to collect that information, but just be aware that if you're entering a free giveaway, a free sweepstakes, that is the reason why it's free. That is the reason they are doing it. Try to grow awareness and also collect information on the people that might be interested.
That doesn't necessarily always mean it's a bad thing. Like, you see stores do it sometimes, store accounts. But you also have to see if it's a trustworthy source, like if it's not, or where they are from, or where they're giving the data from. Normally on the contract or the terms of service, you can kind of have an idea. It'll explain to you. So just keep that in mind.
Well, another thing is also that, we were talking about this, and it is correct, but that also means other people think about this stuff too. So just because you have a contest, just because you have a giveaway, doesn't mean everybody's going to want to just, I want to enter it. If they're interested in it, they might not enter it because they don't know who you are. They don't know what's going to happen with that information, and they don't take the time to look it up or try to see. Even if they do, they have no idea if they can trust you or not, because you're some random new person that's running a contest or a giveaway. Sweepstakes, I mean. So, you won't get as much as you might think based on that.
That's why I think, in my opinion,
entering new contests and giveaways for that very reason.
That's why I think, in my opinion, if you're a small independent production group or director and you're trying to do perks and little sweepstakes and stuff, do it with something small, like a prop or something. Because whenever it's like cash or something with a higher value or something that's not as clear and just, oh, this is what you're going to get and that's it. Then it can be a little more shady or seem or appear that way to people that don't know. So the more simple you make it, I feel like the better, because that way
Value of the project just means it's going to, or the prize anyway, is going to be a lot more sketchy seeming to people.
yeah.
And also, there is things that come into play legally when you have higher valued prizes, and it's not the rules and stuff for you. It's also if you you see people like go on those TV shows where they win a bunch of prizes, Wheel of Fortune and stuff like that. But sometimes they never actually walk away with the prizes. That's because you have to pay taxes on prizes. That's for any contest, that's for any giveaway. You win a prize in something, it's worth a certain value, a certain dollar. That means that you will have to pay the taxes on it. So if you win if a person won a house and the house is valued at $1 million, based on their income and based on the taxes for that year and the state they're in and whatever else, they have to pay the property taxes on it, and they have to pay the taxes, just general taxes, because it's counted as income. It's counted as an asset that's added to your wealth. So you just gained $1 million in the government's eye. And, obviously you don't have that in cash. You just have $1 million worth home, a house that's valued at that amount of money. And so then, people who win those prizes, they sometimes don't actually take it or accept it. That's why in the rules, they always say, if you accept the prize, this and that. And for big prizes like that, they sometimes also say you can do this, or you can vote to get money instead, or you can sell back some of the prizes to us at a certain value so that you can keep the rest. And so if somebody wins 7 prizes off of the Wheel of Fortune, they might sell the car or sell the trip so that they can pay off the taxes for the other prizes they want to keep. Chisom says, if you give away the money, you have to put it in your taxes as well, or is it only the recipient? You can put it in your taxes as a business write-off, as a business expense, but you also have to do the 1099 form and send that to the person, because you technically paid them. Basically, you gave them money, or you gave them a prize value that was worth money. So at a certain dollar amount, it's 600 or higher right now. That could change in the future. But if you give somebody $600 worth in prizes or cash value, or actual physical cash, within 1 year, then you are supposed to write them a 1099 form. And I believe that you can use that in a business expense write-off, because that's part of marketing. And that's why these companies do it. So you can put it in yours, but it'll be a good thing for your taxes. But for the winner, it'll be, a negative thing, because now they have to pay some taxes on that prize. And that's another reason why, like Priscilla said, if you're small, even if you have the funding to be able to give out a big prize, you might not want to, because people will be less interested in doing it. They'll think it's a little more sketchy because it sounds too good to be true. And then even if they do like it, they do want to enter it and they win. It's a lot of those tax laws and rules that go into it that get a lot of winners upset, because a lot of people, like I said, they don't understand that they don't just get to accept $1 million home and not have to pay anything. They still have to pay the property taxes and the income taxes on that new $1 million that's added to their asset value of wealth. And that upsets a lot of winners, because they just want a house, they're excited, and then all the legality and all the contracts and whatever else has to come in, and it's a lot. So yeah, certain prize values, once they get higher, it starts to get a little more complicated. If you were to give out a 2-day trip to the film's premiere and you value that at like $1,000 at the end of the day because you are paying for their hotel, their food, and whatever else, then they would have to pay taxes when winning that. So if they have to pay, let's say 20% is their taxes, then they'd have to pay $200 to be able to accept that prize of $1,000 worth of cash value package for that 2-day trip. So take that into
Sucks, doesn't it?
consideration. Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks for the winners. It really sucks for everybody, I'd say. Because if we didn't have to do that, it'd be a lot cooler and better when you win. But because of that stuff, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword whenever you win. Oh, it's cool, but on the same side.
So now you know if you guys ever want to go into like Family Feud or whatever, understand the terms and understand what taxes you might have to pay depending on what you win.
Yeah, and those bigger contests and things like that, or those bigger shows that have those prizes, they can. That's why they can give them out, is because they can say, "Oh, we'll buy that car from you. It's valued at 40,000, but we'll pay you 20,000 for it if you want to sell it back to us." And then you can use that 20,000 to pay off the taxes for your trip that you just won.
And sometimes it's worth it. At the end of the day, we can't really. It's not necessarily a scam. It's just that's the way taxes work, and they have to do it for them to do it legally. That's how they have to do it.
It's still
That's just something to keep in mind.
It's understandable why they do that. It
Yeah.
still sucks though that they'd only, they
Yeah.
value it less to sell it back to them is what the thing is what I was saying. They tell you it's worth 40,000 because it is, but they're only going to give you a certain lower amount of money to take it back or whatever, to accept it back from you and give you cash value. But that's just for other competitions. Obviously, if you're running your own, if you're doing as an independent filmmaker, you're probably not going to be giving away the car. But that is something to know if you're at that point where maybe you had some deal with a filmmaker, you're using an action movie and you're using their car, and they say you can get one of their cars for free and help promote the film. That's some stuff you're going to have to take into consideration when running a
If you ever see anything with free on it, there's no such thing as free.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Also, you gotta is that when you're entering these competitions, specifically film festivals, since we're talking about film, you have to, like I said, pay particular attention to whatever it is the release forms that you're signing. I know when I was in film school, like a lot of the film festivals, they required you to sign off the work, pretty much saying that they can use it for whatever their intentions were to use it. So I know this one festival I used to enter all the time, and they would take it and they would burn it on a DVD. The 48-hour film festival, the winners go to Filmapalooza in California every whenever seasons they do it in. So my group, we won. So we're going to Filmapalooza next March, but it's their film is going to California to compete with other films. So it's literally the 48 hours pretty much using our work to compete in Filmapalooza. So pretty much what is happening is like, there's some festivals that will literally take, like, if you don't pay attention, some festivals are literally stealing your film and stealing the rights to your film without you even knowing. You just got to pay attention to what is said in that release form. It's pretty much it. And I can understand why, because I know the 48, they have the films on their website, and they need certain access to be able to do that and stuff.
and sometimes it might be worth it for you if you want exposure, or if it's like, oh yeah, if it gets me more views or gets more people knowing about my film.
your experience, then you have that to say, oh yeah, we won the 48, which can be good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the 48s are cool. I'm not. I'm just saying that's an example. Like, when you sign their releases, you're pretty much saying that they can use use your film, put it on their website, and they're pretty much using our film to compete in California at the Filmapalooza. But you got to pay attention, because there may be festivals that say, okay, you entered this festival, we have your film, now it belongs to us. You can't go and do it to anything else. Like, you got to be.
I've heard of that for the prize. Like if you win an award, and they might say, "Oh yeah, just sign this form and you'll win the award for best film." And you sign it, and they're like trying to use their film on YouTube next month, and the film festival. No, that's ours. You signed it. We give you the award. You get to use it. So like Brian's saying, you have to be careful, especially with those pop-up ones, just random film festivals that pop up here and there that are brand new. When we were learning about film festivals, that's why they were saying be careful with that, because exactly like what Brian's saying, they can put whatever they want into the contract. That's why you always want to read those contracts, make sure. And if they're like, oh, just sign it, don't worry about it, it's just standard, that's even more sketchy and even more of a red flag, and maybe you don't want to sign it, because you should be able to have time to read through any legal document somebody's trying to get you to sign. So always be careful with any of that, no matter what form you're signing, read through it. It's boring, it's so boring to read through those things. And sometimes it's really hard to understand. And that's why you might want to get an entertainment lawyer or something to read over it for you. But you never want to sign something without actually reading it, because those things can happen. And legally speaking, they are allowed to keep your film. Why? Because you signed a form saying they could. Oh, I wanted to accept the prize and I gave them what they wanted. We exchanged it. Even if you were unknowing it, you can sue them and stuff, but it's a very hard legal battle to win, because you did sign a legal form saying that they can have it. But yeah, Brian, sorry, did I cut you off? Do you have anything else to say about it?
No, I'm good. You're good.
Okay. But yeah, guys, just be careful, because that happens to a lot of these filmmakers. They lose their film to distributors, to festivals, and to whatever else, because they sign these documents saying that. And usually it's shown as like oh, you win, or you got best thing, your best script contest too. Sometimes you can lose your script rights. What? Because you signed that thing that gives you I won, my script won for best comedy. Oh, but now they get to distribute it. They get to send it off to people, because in the official rules on the website, it said, if you accept the thing, we get all access to release it and whatever else. So yeah, just be careful, read through it, and make sure that you're only granting specific rights to it.
So there's no class on Thursday, but we have class Monday?
Yeah, just for this week. We're combining today's and Thursday stuff to today.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. We're still going to. It was just explaining more of that.
Okay.
All right. So after that, what we're talking about is proof of concepts. So proof of concepts, what are they? Sometimes you may have an idea that you think will be a really great film, but it goes against some of the industry norms, or maybe it's just a hard thing to describe through a script or photos. Or maybe it's something that's going to be expensive. It's been done before, but it's expensive. You're kind of an unknown filmmaker. You've never made a feature film, or you've only made one. It's going to be a harder sell, a harder pitch. So in those cases and others, you may want to consider making a proof of concept short film or a proof of concept webisode. This stuff comes from Film Courage. It's letter A in the syllabus. The video is Why You Need a Proof of Concept Short Film, Jesse Harris. It could also be just a trailer or even a teaser. It doesn't necessarily have to be a short film. It could just be a trailer with specific scenes or specific moments that make it feel like they are, that kind of give the feeling and show what the film will be about. Or it could even be just a teaser if you just want to kind of show the look and sort of the feel of the film. But you some ask, what exactly is going against industry norms? Is that film in general or specific genres? So industry norms is more like the length of a film. The normal length of a film is 1.5 to 2.5 hours. Once you start getting into 3 hours and longer, or underneath an hour and a half, it starts becoming less of a feature film and more of a short film. Or if you're going 3 hours or more, it's becoming so long that it is a harder sell to distributors, because it's harder to get into theaters with a film that long, because they have, they want to place it a lot. Or if it's more of an art house type film, it's less of an industry norm, industry standard of like, it's not as marketable. And so that's kind of going against it. Or maybe you're combining ideas that have never been combined before. You're combining in a certain kind of genre with another one, and those two usually clash, but you're going to combine them anyway. And a romantic comedy combined with a horror film, that could be really cool. It could also be very hard to get done right, and it could have the tone clash. And so if you're telling somebody that right off the bat, it's going to be a 3-hour long romantic comedy horror film, then that's automatically going to make everybody be like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's going to work, because it's going against those industry norms. Or like we said, for marketing or for distribution, if you're trying to do some new technology like NFTs, I've seen some things that are using NFTs to try to market it, or using NFTs to distribute it, to try to get, instead of like crowdfunding, they're trying to sell people NFTs, and they have some kind of digital ownership over the film. It's a new form of distribution. It doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means that it's not proven to work. And so that's going against an industry norm, because the normal way to distribute is now through streaming services, or as a TV movie, or in theaters. And so if you're not doing any of the normal types of distribution, and you're planning to do something a little different or new, it's going to be against the industry norms. And so it's going to be a harder sell. And there's plenty of others that are like that, but those are basically what I'm talking about, is like anything that goes against the standard, goes against what is usually done, whether that's the length of the film, the genre, the concept, or anything else like that. And in those cases, especially for the ones that you can kind of show how it's going to work, like I said, like romantic comedy horror, that's probably already been done before. I don't know.
I've seen a bunch.
Okay, but it's a little less common than you would see with other film genre types.
Oh yeah, definitely. The ones I know are a little more niche, or there's films that didn't do very well.
Yeah, and so you're trying to show, plus you might be showing like, oh, how is that even going to work? Isn't the tone going to clash? And so instead of just pitching the idea, the script, you want to kind of prove that it can work. You're making a proof of the concept of your film. The idea that you have, you're proving that it can work. That's what a proof of concept is.
Yeah, a lot of those came out in specific moments in time, or during specific waves.
Yeah, and so like, you could find that there's been plenty of things like that. And so you're like, oh, well, you can just point to other things that work. But if you're trying to do something that's not as normal, not found as much, maybe you're doing a horror musical. Is that? It's a very different tone. So I would say, even if there are something like that,
It's that weird
a harder
song
sell.
with pirates.
That's not a horror musical. That was like an action
It's not.
slasher or something.
Does an episode of Riverdale count?
I don't know, but either way, like I'm saying, like you can tell that it's a little bit of a harder sell, because it just sounds like it's not going to work. And so if you show that it's going to work.
Horror opera. Oh, Phantom of the Opera is kind of like a horror.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Kind of like sort of, yeah.
Yeah, good.
My mind is
Creepy as heck,
out there.
and it's a musical.
Okay,
I
well,
don't
that's what I'm
see
saying. I'm just coming up with them off the top of my
I'm
head.
playing.
Trying to find something else a little different.
There you go.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like for you to actually show the idea, a proof of concept might be needed to help illustrate that this idea works. This idea will work. I have it in my head, and let me show you it with this short film I did. Let me show you it with this trailer we made. And that way you can show the investors or the producer you're trying to get on board, the actors, whoever you're trying to get, you can show it to them so that they can see and hear and actually feel what that idea is going to be, instead of just imagining it in their head based on the script. So it's basically an example of the main tone, story, or plot points and quality that would be found in the feature version or the series if it's a concept for a show. That's another thing. It has to be quality. It has to show the quality that you are able to do, especially if you're a new filmmaker. Then you need to show that you are capable of doing this idea and accomplishing it. And so you don't want to just throw it together in your backyard if it's supposed to be an epic opera horror film that's in the woods. Go out in the woods, get a good camera, actually put some money into your proof of concept to have a quality product that shows that this idea works.
Wait, yeah,
Hey, Chisholm.
wait, yeah. Oh, hey, okay. I feel like, okay, even if your proof of concept, even if it doesn't show that the quality is there, can it at least show that like you're someone who's creative, even if the execution is flawed? Because I feel like for your first film, it may not always be good. There's a high chance, maybe not bad, but like rough in the works, I guess. Like I feel like that's you kind of have to expect that, but can it at least show that, okay, the film kind of is but like the concept is really good. Like, can they see merit in that, or is it just like if the execution is bad, they're just gonna throw it away?
It depends. I mean, I have seen ones that I would say aren't very high quality that have been known to create a feature film out of it. I don't think it has to be the quality of the film itself. You know, it doesn't need to be as high of quality as the actual film would be. But I would say, in my opinion, it would need to be quality enough that people could see the concept and see the idea that you're going for without it being like so bad that it's hard to do. Like, let's say the musical horror, you have some kind of CGI monster in it, but in your short film, we're just adding ideas to this thing.
Goodness, you're just making it awful.
It's a horror film. It could have,
But CGI monster though?
it could be whatever we want. It's a horror film.
Yeah, but monster doesn't really scream monster.
You're right. I need this proof of concept to show you my idea so that you can see it.
Yes, yes, definitely.
That's what I'm saying. But anyway,
Holy moly,
that's what I'm saying. If the more ridiculous and crazy your idea is, or not even ridiculous, just the more out there it is, the higher chance that you'll probably need a proof of concept to show it. But let's say we wanted a CGI monster in our feature film with this horror musical or horror opera. Well, in your short film, if you're going to show part of the monster, if you're going to show it entirely, which I would say you shouldn't, because it's a proof of concept, so you don't want them to actually see the monster, just like if you were doing a trailer, since it's horror. But let's just say you're trying to show that this is kind of the feeling of it. If you don't do a good job with the monster in the short film, it's going to be a lot harder of a sell to those investors or to that producer to show that it's going to work in the feature film. So Chisholm, I would say it depends on what it is, and it depends on what it is, and like if the tone of the project is correct, I would say it doesn't matter as much about the quality. Like if the acting isn't that great, you're like, oh, these aren't going to be the actors for the feature film. And it still shows the cinematography, or it shows the kind of the music, and it kind of all goes together and has that feeling of the film you're going for your feature, then I would say that would be able to be a proof of concept for the idea. But it's all subjective, so it does depend on who you are trying to sell it to, and you might show it to 10 investors, 9 of them hate it, 1 of them might like it and see the potential in it. So the higher quality you can make it, the better, but you don't have to have it be as high of quality as the actual feature film will be, because, you know, obviously a feature film is going to have a lot more money than a short film might. However, you don't want to just, like I said, go in the backyard and film a few twigs and act like it's the monster, because it's going to look terrible and it's not going to be anything like the actual project that you're trying to do. So proof of concepts still need a lot of effort and usually financing to get it looking good and feeling like that movie will feel, even if it's not the exact quality, production quality that the film would be. Like I said, you also might have something in your film, your feature film, that's pretty difficult to pull off. It could be a CGI monster, or it could be an action scene that's really hard to do, or something expensive or something difficult. And so a proof of concept or a proof of concept short film, it can help show how you would pull something off. If there's something in it that's expensive or difficult to do, you could show, here's how we would do it. We've already done it in our short film. And that could help gain investor confidence and help you pitch your idea better to those people that might otherwise think, you're a new filmmaker, there's no way you're going to be able to pull off this action scene that's kind of like The Matrix. And it's like, if you put it in your proof of concept, then you can prove to them that you can, if it has, you know, a decent quality and it got pulled off correctly and the feeling is there. Or a proof of concept could be used to show that you're capable of making a quality product as a new filmmaker. So it might not be an expensive thing, it might not be something that's difficult, because feature films in general are already difficult enough. And so you're a new filmmaker, you might just show that you're capable of making a film at all, and it's going to be a quality product. And so that way you can showcase your skills, and you can showcase that you know what you're doing, or you know how to do it. It can also be used to show what you're going for with the theme, tone, style, and pacing of the story. Even if you've made a lot of content, if it is a different kind of content, like if you made a lot of commercials, but now you're wanting to make a narrative project, or you've done 10 horror films, but now you're wanting to make this action film, a lot of the times people just won't have the faith that you can do it. They'll basically treat you like a new filmmaker, because like, yeah, you're good with horror, but that doesn't mean you're good. That doesn't always mean that you're going to be good with action films, because those don't always translate. And so if you can show it through a proof of concept that I am capable of making an action film as well, here's my proof of concept, it can help sell you and your capability. So showing them a proof of concept will allow them to see your work and that the story works, as well as that you are capable of pulling those two things off. Proof of concept short film can be any length. It can also be a snippet of the story, a condensed version of the story, or not exactly connected to the story, but in the same realm or the same world of the story, depending on what your story is. I've seen people talk about short films where, let's just say it was something like Mission Impossible. And instead of using the main character from Mission Impossible for the proof of concept, they take one of the side characters, or they take a different spy, or they take somebody else and make a short film based in that world. Let's say John Wick, but they don't take John Wick. They take one of those side spies, and they show a story with them. They're still in the same realm. They're still in the same world. The hotel and all that stuff still works the same, but we're not actually seeing John Wick or the actual film story. We're just seeing the world of that story will be in. And that can work depending on how different that world is and how connected it is to the film itself. So it depends on if you want to do that or not. And that way you don't have to worry about the whole, like, I'm going to have an actor for the short film, but I don't want this actor for the feature film. I'm just using them to show the proof of concept. That way you can be like, oh, well, you're a different character, so it doesn't matter, instead of it being a more of an awkward issue. But you could also just show part of the story, one of the scenes that's going to show what the whole story is about, that the whole film kind of revolves around, that pivotal moment in the story. And you could just show that scene and show that you're capable of making it. Or if it's a really different idea, you might just show that the idea as a whole works and do a very condensed version where you're skipping a lot of plot points, but you're showing that the beginning, middle, and end work together in tandem. And so you're making a condensed version of the story. Also, when you're making a proof of concept, Film Courage says that you should be making a screenplay first for the feature film. Make a screenplay for a feature film. That's the normal way you want to do it. And then making a short film proof of concept version of the script. Otherwise, without the feature script, you're just making a short film and not exactly a proof of concept. Because especially if you're making a proof of concept and somebody wants to read the script based on your proof of concept, it's good to already have one available and ready. Do you have the feature film for this idea? Do you have the feature film script for this idea? And then yeah, here it is. So no, I haven't written it yet, but this is what it's going to be like. Again, that's a harder sell, and they might forget by the time you write the whole thing out and lose interest. So also, it's, you might write a script and you're changing ideas as you go because you're seeing that certain scenes don't work, or you're just writing it and you realize that you want it to kind of be a different idea than what you originally thought it was going to be. So if you're making a proof of concept based on your original idea and then you're writing the feature script later, you might end up changing some things, and that proof of concept no longer connects to the tone or the general feeling of the features film script because you've decided you want to do something different with it. You want the main message to be something different. You discovered or you realized that you wanted to change it, or that you just you thought the main message was something else when you began, but you realized as you started writing that it was something different. I've seen that happen all the time. And so if your main message, your main tone is going to be different, then again, that proof of concept doesn't really show the feature film now. It shows something else. So they recommend writing out the feature film script first, then taking that script and creating a short film script that you'll use as your proof of concept. That way you already have the ideas and you've already made the changes necessary and you've already figured out what you're going to do, so that the proof of concept is actually just a shorter version or within the realm of that feature film script. Also, by writing the script first, you'll be able to better represent it with the proof of concept. As when writing a script, like I said, there's often a lot of changes made, which may change the story or may change the feeling of it. It's important that a proof of concept short film or trailer looks and be at or near the quality that you'd want the film to be at. If you can't get the resources or call in the favors needed for making the quality as good as you'd like it, then it may not be worth doing, as it won't be showing what you're trying to prove, which is you're capable of doing it and you can make a quality product and it will feel this way. If you can't get the resources and be able to make that short film that's going to prove that you can do it, then there's no point, because that's the whole point of it. You're trying to prove that you can do it. And so if you can't get the funding for that, then you're not actually going to prove it, even if you go through with creating that proof of concept, because it's not going to be the quality that the film would be if you had the financing you need for it. Honestly, I think it depends, because sometimes if you can make a good quality product that may not be as good of quality as the actual film, you can still pitch it as something like, we made this with this budget. Or imagine what we could do with a feature film budget. If it's still a good quality, like good enough quality, then you might be able to make it work. It just depends. And regardless, the short needs to look good and feel right, even if it's not as high of quality, or even if it's very low quality compared to what the feature film would be. You can still use it, but it needs to feel good and look right. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So yeah, like it needs to be a good product. It needs to be something you think about and actually take into consideration and try to make right. Don't just shove it out there so that you can prove you can do it. Take the time needed to actually show that you can do it. Many proof of concepts don't show the ending of the feature film either. And they either end on a cliffhanger or they choose a certain story point as the short's ending, like one of the endings of the scenes or something. Some proof of concepts also take one or two scenes from the feature and they fashion that into a short film. Moviemaker.com, which is letter E in the syllabus, says with a short film, if you achieve any amount of success with it, the first and possibly last question you'll get from a producer is, have you written the feature screenplay on this? So you want to be able to say yes while you have that opportunity. Most of the sources agree that if you're a first-time director, proof of concepts are almost essential in order to be able to be taken seriously when pitching a feature film. You want a proof of concept to help you secure the budget, attract strong supporting actors, and get you representation through sales agents or producer reps. A proof of concept can also help you to fine-tune the idea or make changes based on it if things aren't working like they did on paper. Maybe you thought something was going to work well, you thought you would have this person doing flips, jumping through the sky to do some kind of fight move, but you're realizing that it doesn't look good, it doesn't translate well when actually filming it. Now you have to adjust the idea, you have to change some things around to make it work, because everything that sounds good on paper doesn't always look good on film. It doesn't always translate. Someone says, how do you save yourself if they say no? Basically, you just have to say okay and run with it and be professional and then try for the next. Because you're going to be, if you're pitching your film, most of the time you're going to try to pitch to multiple people, multiple distributors and stuff like that, or whoever you're trying to pitch to.
No, I meant like when you said you had to write, like you said, oh, they'll ask you, did you write the feature screenplay or something? And they want you to say yes.
Oh,
hypothetically, if you say no, like, how can you
so
say
how you do that? I've heard some people say, yes, I'll get it to you next week. And then they go home and they stay up late for days and they write out a feature script based on it. That's what I've heard some people do. If you just tell them no, then you kind of already turn them off, which is why some people will say, yeah, I do. If they don't even actually have it, they say, yeah, I have it. I'll get it to you by this time. Or, yeah, I'm working on the last draft of it. I'll have it to you by the end of the month. Or, something like that.
Giving time frame is very important because it shows that you're actively working on it, as opposed to just being like, oh,
even if you aren't, you want to, sort of pretend that you are.
and hopefully you will. Like you're pretending right now, but as soon as you get home, you're gonna freaking,
oh yeah, jump on it.
yeah, you're gonna do it.
But yeah, that's what I've heard people do, because you want to make it seem like you have it, even if you don't. So I would say, try to actually have it, but yeah, if you do run into that situation, that's how you can kind of go around it and still get them interested.
I heard the Bernie Mac show was made that way.
The Bernie Mac show, you're saying like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I have it.
Yeah, the guy who what do you call it? The showrunner.
Mhm.
So yeah, so pretty much he said he winged it.
Oh wow.
Like they didn't even let Bernie Mac He said they were so cautious. They even let Bernie Max talk. That was so. He was like, no. Sometimes you have to control the talent.
Right. Yeah.
So he came with the name. You know, remember what you said? So he came with the name. It was like, oh, Bernie Mac. Okay. So what's the concept? All right. Well, I'll have it for you. And that's how he just started winging it.
Nice. Yeah, and sometimes that
Mhm.
can work, especially if you're able to quickly write out an idea. If you have an idea in your head, but you don't actually have a script, sometimes you are able to get people interested in it. And then you can yeah, you kind of just write it out whenever you are asked, whenever you're asked
Mhm.
about it. Yeah, I'll have it to you by this point, and then you write it out and see. And sometimes that can work. Oftentimes, I would say more often than not, it probably doesn't work, but those are the times we don't hear about. So there's no way to know. Um, but either way, yeah, you can do that, especially if you actually have a script or you have half the script written. You can definitely pretend like you have it. I guess you're lying, but you're saying that you have it or you have it,
We don't condone lying. We're just giving some suggestions and options.
You just don't want to lose their interest. When people are interested in it, you want to try to maintain their interest above all else. You might find that once you write out the script, they don't even want it anyway, but at least you are taking that chance and that opportunity before it just goes away because you don't have the script at all. So yeah, I've heard, you always it's kind of like fake it till you make it, but for a script writer, you should definitely want to have the script anyway. And it's not just for them, it's also for you to help fine tune your idea. And then a proof of concept will just help you further fine tune it and help you make those changes. It can help you truly figure out what the main point of your film is. You might have an idea in your head, you might have this proof of concept all worked out, but you still might not know the true main point of the film. What is the main message in this film? And you might not know, and that's fine. But when you're writing out your script, you start to realize it, or before you write it out, you realize it because you work out all the scenes in your head, depending on how you write scripts. You might make an outline beforehand, or you might write it and write as you go. Either way, you are going to figure out what this film is about based on the outline or based on experiencing it as you write it out. So writing out a feature script can help fine tune the idea and improve it instead of just that proof of concept that you're making. And it can also help you think harder about how you will go about accomplishing certain aspects of the feature. Proof of concepts, like I said, if it's something expensive, if it's something difficult to do, making a proof of concept can help you actually logistically have to figure out how the production side of things are going to go. How are we going to accomplish this idea that I have in my head? If you're saying that you wanted somebody to draw a picture and it's going to come to life off the page, how are you going to accomplish that? What are you going to do to make it work? Is it going to be CGI? Is it going to be special effects? Is it going to be a mixture of different things? I don't know, but you will start to figure out how it's going to work when you're trying to do it, because you have to accomplish it some way. And then you might see that it's not working. Oh, it doesn't look the way I thought it would, or it's not as good of a moment as on the page, what it felt like it would be. Sometimes that happens, and it has nothing to do with if you're a good filmmaker or not. It's just that it doesn't translate well. And sometimes it's just that you're not accomplishing it right, or you're going about it in the wrong way. So proof of concepts can help you figure those things out, fine tune it, and make the changes needed to show what this film will be. And also you already have a jump start on the production side of things for the feature film, because you already have some of those logistics, some of those difficult production side of things figured out about how you're going to go about it with the feature film if you get funding and if you get the idea greenlit. Other than that, does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about proof of concepts?
Yeah, I had a couple people try to pitch me some proof of concept ideas, and it was rough on my end, um because, like, they're not filmmakers or artists, as we like to be called. If they're not artists, then it's kind of hard for people who aren't artists to articulate what is in their head. Me, I'm an artist, so I can just draw it out or take a photo or something like that. But not everybody can do that.
I feel like
Um,
even
I
if
know
you're
I
some-
can. I feel
I feel like yeah, for someone who's incredibly creative or whatever, you don't have drawing abilities, it's really hard.
Yeah, because
yeah,
then you have to get somebody else to get them to make it right.
yeah. So it gets really challenging trying to like communicate with people that it's one thing me trying to articulate my ideas because I can just show you. But the other way around, that's where it kind of becomes difficult because it's not like you can just give me a hard drive and plug it in my head and I can see what you're talking about. No. But it's difficult to talk to some people because they have this idea in their head, and then you want to, well, that's already been done before. This is literally this movie, or that's the, and all those, it's not, it's different because the pencils are yellow instead of green or something. They make something up to argue with you or something. But the biggest problem I had a lot specifically with proof of concept is like a lot of people that have come to me with the proof of concept don't have the money or the funds or anything like that. Like the last guy, he wanted me to film his autonomous car, proof of concept, but I was like, okay, well, you're not paying me, one, which is, I haven't even gone into that category just yet. But I said, aside from that, if you're not going to pay me, you can't expect me to spend any money either at the same time. You know what I mean? Um, so I was like, well, with your idea, you're talking about cars, so that means we need vehicles. You know what I mean? So I was like, either way, somewhere down the line, like you're gonna have to spend some money on it. You know what I mean? Like that's another thing people don't think about when they think about proof of concept. Like, are you willing to invest at all, or is it something like, yo, um, and that kind of show, like, I think you guys were talking about it earlier. Does it have to be um the highest quality or anything like that? But if you come to me with a proof of concept, and if you find a creative way of filming it, that's one thing. But like, if you have this idea in your head and you come to me and you said, oh, I have this idea on my head, I want you to film it, this, that, and the other. But if you're not willing to, it's one thing not to pay me, as the guy that's actually making the film. It's one thing, but it's another thing to like not actually invest it in at all. That kind of just shows me like, okay, you might not have confidence in it.
Right.
Things like that show with that kind of gesture, like, oh, I want you to film this for free. But you know um and that's the thing you need to look for when you're coming towards investors. Like, what are you putting in other than just your idea? Like, what are you contributing to it at all? And then you guys talked about the script and not having it ready. That's another thing I'm always like, I'm working on a film now. Well, I'm editing this film. I took on the task of editing. And then midway through, the guy that's in charge of it, the director, was like, "Oh, well, I wanna film this tier. This he wanted to film like an intro, and then he wanted to do a scene for the sequel." And I was like, "All right, well, when you get that, let me. Oh, but I want you to film it." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. You hired me to edit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you told me, like, you called me up and said you needed an editor. Here I
That's
am."
another proof of how people should know how other people's work goes. Because if he knew how long it took to edit the kind of work you're doing, he wouldn't be like, "Oh, you can do that and this."
The problem I was having was that he wasn't finished. I was like, you're not finished the film. you know, I'm sitting here editing, and now you're sitting like trying to get me the rest of the pieces to edit. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and
There's
made
like a whole other scene that he's bringing in, or a whole other freaking footage.
I gave I gave him a date of October because he said, "Oh, I want to screen it in October." So I was like, "All right, I think I can have it done in October." And I put together a rough. he looks at the rough. He goes, oh, I think I want to add this, this, and this. I was like, no, like you're not finished the film. You're telling me you're not finished the film. So now you're procrastinating. What the point I'm trying to get is, it just shows me the unpreparedness. I'm just the editor, but just imagine what your executives are going to think, when you come to them and they ask you for a script and you're like, oh, I don't got it. At least have the first 10 pages, because that's the biggest thing. They say the first 10 pages are the most important. So like, if you have them first 10 pages down, like you can show them, here's the first 10 pages. This is all I got. But, this should hook you, if you don't get into it with the first 10 pages, like, okay.
I
Then.
was about to say, if you do go the route of criticism, oh, you don't have it, but you tell them, oh, I can give it to you by this point. You got to be really careful with that, because if you don't, and you're going to come home and do it, and you present to them a first draft, and they think that that's your final product,
Yeah.
that'll screw you up, because they're like, oh, this is the best you can do.
Right.
When it's not, but you gave them a deadline and you didn't do it, then you end up shooting yourself in the foot. So that is another thing you have to be really careful about. Like over-promising if you can deliver, or overextending yourself where you're like, oh yeah, I can give them a script by this time. And you present that first draft, what they believe to be your final draft, and you end up screwing your reputation.
It goes back to the saying I used to have way back, like, you go asking around, you a writer? Oh yeah, I'm a writer. Well, all right, well, send me some of your work. Let me see some of your work. Oh, I don't have anything done just yet. Well, then can you consider yourself a writer?
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. That's all true. And it's like, so proof of concepts is like Brian's saying, like, it's basically an investment into your idea for whoever's making, like, if you want to make a proof of concept, you should be investing time and money into that thing because you believe it's going to work. If you don't have enough faith that this proof of concept is going to make the feature film work, then why should anyone else? As basically the whole point is like, why would any other investor want to be like, oh yeah, I believe in this concept, when you clearly don't, because you filmed this proof of concept in your backyard, So you want to make sure that you are putting in the effort, you actually have the finances to be able to do the proof of concept, or you just skip it entirely because having a crappy proof of concept isn't going to prove anything. So there's no point in doing it.
Yeah. If nothing, it's going to ruin your reputation, because it's better that you don't have it and you wait to present it when you do, and you maybe, oh, I can't do it at this time or miss that window, and do it well, then you try to do it sloppily because you take that one chance you got and you ruin it.
Yeah, and they could actually end up deterring people. And like Priscilla said with the script, if you write it out in 2 days, you don't have time to fine tune it at all. It might work. You might be able to get them on board and like the idea enough to where they take it and they accept that script. Or it could deter them because maybe it's your first draft and it's not that great. You didn't have time to make a second draft and fine tune it. And you definitely didn't have time to make the final draft where you want to keep everything that's in it. And you end up giving them a product that isn't as good. The proof of concept, the script, whatever it may be, you want to present yourself as best you can. You want to put your best foot forward so that you are improving your chances of pitching this thing, of getting funding, of getting producers on board, of getting actors, whoever, of getting it distributed, or a studio or executives to sign off on producing it with you. If you make a crappy thing, if you make a crappy script, if you make a crappy proof of concept, even if your idea is great, even if you know that you can do better, they don't. And that will just deter them from working with you or accepting your project, because all they see is a bad short film, or all they see is a bad script. They don't know what you're capable of, which is exactly why you need this proof of concept, to show them what you're capable of. And that's why you have to put in your own effort and time and money to make sure you get the feeling and the tone down and at least good of quality enough to where it's not going to deter somebody from giving you more funding to make a better product. All right.
So,
What?
that was a loud press.
Other. All right. Moving on from that, we're talking about the 3 V's of communication. What is that? That is verbal, vocal, and visual communication. We're specifically going to tie this into pitching.
Verbal and vocal the same thing.
No. All right. So pitching is very much about your communication as well as your preparation. This stuff comes from the Law Center. It's letter B in the syllabus. It is, the video is vocal, verbal, and visual channels of communication, how to master them all. Verbal. Oh, so there are 3 V's to communication. There's verbal, which is your actual words. The words you choose make a difference. Being clear and intentional with your wording is important. It's what you say. That's verbal. Vocal, how you say it. It's the volume of your voice, loud or quiet. The speed at which you speak, your tone, pitch, and your use of pauses. The clarity of which you speak. Being clear without mumbling, loud enough to hear and draw attention, fast enough to show your passion, but slow enough for others to keep up, and use of emphasizing certain words or upcoming points are all things that can help your pitch. I'm pausing a lot while I'm speaking because I want to make it clear what I'm saying, and I want to make sure that you guys are paying attention to the next thing I'm getting ready to say. And so I am speaking more like this before moving on to the next thing, because it makes the next thing stand out a bit more.
Like we are stupid. No, I'm kidding.
Wait. Wait, I
Sorry,
have a
go ahead.
question. Wait, me?
Go ahead.
So like, does this really work with like, let's say communicating like online with hashtags? Because I feel like a lot of times, for example, when I text my friends or whatever, sometimes the tone can be off. Like I'll say something sarcastic, but it might come off as mean through text, unless they actually, so like, how do you translate this when it's like online communication?
That's the thing, you can't. So that's actually
These are fun. No, I'm kidding.
no, like that is why it is hard for like email communication to
Yeah.
work, because now they don't have the visual. They don't see your movements while you're talking.
Frankly, one thing I heard that helps with that is writing in a more formal manner, because the more formal manner of writing, it comes off a lot more not angry or overly positive. It just comes off as even, and it doesn't come off overly aggressive. It doesn't come off overly enthusiastic. It just comes off as a lot more professional. It comes off a lot more balanced, and that's why you will see in a lot of emails, a lot of company stuff, unless they're doing like an Instagram post or whatever, but a lot of companies will try to be a little more formal in the way of speaking, because that way it'll come off more even toned and more professional, as opposed to if you're trying to
Be funny, or if you're trying to comment on something without being rude or whatever.
it can come off more forced than funny. It can come off more lame than funny. It can come off more sassy than, like, there's many ways of interpreting it if you're trying to do something, because everyone will have their bias and their internal voice when reading something.
So basically, when you're writing something, specifically when you're pitching or you're talking to like to investors or to distributors or executives that you're trying to get funding from or some kind of help with your project, you want to, like Priscilla said, maintain formality and make it professional sounding and seeming, because that way it won't be read the wrong way, because they can't hear your vocals. They don't know how you're saying this, and they don't see your body language or the way you're moving your mouth or the expressions you're making, or there's no visual to tie into the words you're saying. So all they have is verbal. All they have is the actual words there. And so they can read it however they want because they can imagine you moving your hands about or making certain, they can imagine you smirking and making a little like, hey, I got you.
Or
Kind
it's
of
just their mood, the way they're reading it can come off a different way. Another tip that I would give as someone who's very anxious and who is also very sarcastic or sometimes can come off the wrong way, I will read it in my head in multiple different tones sometimes, just to make sure that, oh, this is how I would read it. But if someone else is reading it in a different tone, how would it come off? And I will do that, like reading it in my head or even out loud sometimes, but more often than not in my head, so people don't think I'm crazy. So I can gauge how it would come off. Oh, if I'm reading it like this, which is how I read it, it comes off like this. But if someone's reading it in a different tone, not necessarily aggressive, but just a different tone, would it come off aggressive or would it come off sarcastic? And then I adjust it according to that. I go off that.
Yeah, and so if you're talking about just like texting your friends or whatever, and you're being sarcastic, /s, that's how they say sarcastic, or you could do, sarcastic to make sure people understand it. If you're telling jokes and stuff while you're trying to pitch, because you have a comedy film, you could still do that to make sure that it's clear that it's a joke, but it could also kind of take away from the joke.
But there are certain ways of writing where like you can put in the context or the subtext of sarcasm. But that takes, like practice and certain context or certain subtext in your pitch, to where that character or that specific line, you read it and you're like, oh, with this context.
Now, that is why when we are writing, you have bold, you can embolden a word, like you can make it very like this. The word bold is more bold than the rest because it's darker, so it stands out. And so if it's in a sentence, we automatically see that word stands out. There's also italics, which will have the word in italics. It'll be like slanted, making it stand out a little more and making it more readable that way. And then, there's also the use of punctuation. If you're using a period, if you're using quotation marks, if you're using exclamation points, certain things like that can help people read it in the more of the way that you are trying to say it. But that is why communication through text message or through email is hard, because we use these three ways of communicating to communicate with each other. We use verbal, vocal, and visual, but with just the words, just the text messages or just the emails, all we have really is the actual words. All we have is the verbal. So we don't have vocal, we don't have visual. We can't see them while they're saying it, and we can't hear the way they're saying it. And so it's harder to communicate, and that's why it can get taken the wrong way so much. And that's why when you're joking to your friends or you're doing that, they can take it in a rude way. Trust me, it's happened to me tons of times. Somebody takes what I say the wrong way completely and thinks I'm being a total jerk when I'm not really saying it that way. I'm just being a little more sarcastic or jokey.
Or sometimes he's just very matter of fact and it comes off as a certain way. You just stay like
either way, even what we're doing right now, you guys can't see me while I'm saying it. So all you have is the verbal, what I'm actually saying, and all you have is the vocal of how I'm saying it to help illustrate it. Now with visuals, I am showing stuff on screen to help with the visual to match up with the vocal and the verbal, but you can't see me, so you can't see the way I'm moving while speaking. But honestly, I'm just at the computer screen, so I'm not really doing anything, which is why I don't show it. But it's just to give you an example of why being in person is still the best way to pitch something to somebody, because it's the best way to communicate. Being in person, people can see you, they can see your illustrations and your examples. If you have a presentation or a slideshow of some kind, They can hear the actual words you're speaking and the way that you're saying them. And so then they can get a better message. They can understand your communication. They can understand your message a lot better because they can have all the aspects of communication instead of being cut off from a few, like other forms of communication, email, phone calls, text messages. Those all cut out certain aspects of communication, which makes it harder to communicate the right thing. So vocal is how you say it. Verbal is what you're actually saying, the words you're choosing. Visual is also a part of how you are communicating. It's the body language, facial expressions, posture, how you're dressed. It's eye contact, whether or not you're smiling, gesturing, or gesturing too much, and other visual cues. For a message to be clear, all three of these need to be working toward the same thing. If one or two of these are different from the other, your message will be unclear or not believed. So if I'm pitching an idea and my body language is saying I like the idea and I sound enthusiastic, but I'm using words like, yeah, it's an okay idea, or it's decent, it's not bad. How I describe the idea, it's not going to be believed just because I look like I'm excited about it and I sound excited about it. If I'm choosing certain words, if my verbal aspect of communication is saying, yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good idea, it's less likely that my message is going to come across because my words, the actual words I'm choosing, aren't as enthusiastic sounding as the way I'm saying it and the way my body is looking when I'm talking, or the way my face lights up, or whatever. Similarly, if I'm using the right words, I'm saying, yeah, this film is awesome. I think it's one of the best ideas. My body language matches it. You know, I look excited. I look pumped up. I look like I really believe in this idea. But vocally, I'm speaking slow and mumbling. Then my enthusiasm for the idea is not going to be as believed because I don't sound like I really believe in the idea. I may look it, I may be choosing the right words, but I'd sound like I don't actually believe what I'm saying. And again, if I'm using the right words and vocally I'm expressing my enthusiasm, but when asked if I believe this project will take off, I say yes excitedly, but I start shaking my head, then my message won't be believed. Why am I shaking my head no while saying yes? Those are going against each other. That visual communication of my head shaking back and forth is saying more than my words are saying by yes, I do believe it. Because clearly, well, not clearly, but it's going to be believed that I don't actually believe what I'm saying because I'm shaking my head no. So this guy, Dr. Albert, I think it's Morabian, is a professor of psychology at the University of California Studies. His studies show that in many situations, visual communication is the most important, followed by vocal and then verbal. The actual words you use are less important than how you look when you're saying them, your body language. Like I said, if I'm shaking my head no, that's going to say more than if I'm actually physically saying yes. And if I sound like I'm saying yes excitedly, me shaking my head no is going to communicate that I don't believe what I'm saying. So they say visual, the body language, the expressions people make. Those are things that we pay more attention to. 55% of communication is visual, according to his studies anyway. So it's all, it could be right, it could be wrong, especially in certain situations. But visual communication, the way you look when you're saying something, if you look like you're lying and you're not, somebody's still going to believe that you're lying because they see it on your face or they think they do. And so, that's the visual communication aspect. Vocal is also much more important than verbal. If I say, yeah, it's okay, but I'm saying it like, yeah, it's okay, then that's going to say less of a message. It's going to say more so that I do think it is a good idea than if I say, Yeah, it's the best idea I've ever had. That's going to say more so that I don't think it is, because vocal, the way I say it, is more important than the actual words I use. Even still, with all that, you do want to try to get 100%. You want to make sure that what you are saying matches how you're saying it, matches how you look while you're saying it, so that they all match up, and that the communication, the message you're sending out, that you believe this idea is good, is being received by everybody else, and they believe that you believe what you are saying. And that is the best way to do it. Try to match up all three of these V's of communication. Also, if you're trying to appear confident, but you're looking at the ground and you're slouching, then your message of being confident is not going to come across. It's going to make it seem like you are not confident, because you won't look at anybody in the eye, you're slouching, and you look like you're scared. So because we're talking about pitching, which is basically a presentation, we want to think of how we can visually communicate our message with more than just our body language as well. Things like visual slides can tremendously help your pitch, or passing around visual documents like mood boards, pitch decks, etc. That can help for people to actually see what you're saying. Visual communication is faster than verbal. If I were to show this picture, let me get a bigger version of it. All right, if I were to show this picture, it's a lot faster than explaining what it is or how it looks. Also, explaining how it looks won't bring this image to everybody's mind. By showing it, I've sped up the process and can briefly mention what it is or what it looks like, and have the visual aid to help illustrate it. I could say, oh, it's an underground place with orange and blue lights. Everybody would think of something different if I didn't show exactly what this image was. But now that you're seeing it while I'm saying it, you can quickly pick up on how I'm saying it, what I'm saying, and it instantly comes through. Visuals are also more memorable. If I explain the percentage of communication, it's harder to remember or grasp. So if I were to just say, oh, 55% of communication is visual, 35% is vocal, and whatever else percent is, I actually don't remember the percentages. Let me see. 38% is vocal and 7% is verbal. If I were to say that without showing it, it's harder to remember it. It's harder to grasp what I'm saying. But if I show the visual while explaining it, it's easier to understand and easier to remember. That is why I started doing this. It's a lot easier for me to explain, and it's a lot easier for you guys to all understand while I'm showing pictures of the stuff I'm talking about whenever I have a visual aid available, like this one. And so you can think of the same thing when you're pitching. You have an idea and you want to show it. Oh, I have an idea for it to be an underground, kind of like a bunker, and there's orange lights coming out of the right and blue lights from the middle so that it separates. Again, you're not really going to come up with this picture unless I'm showing it to you. And that is why the visual aspects of film are so important, especially because film is a visual medium. You want to, that is why we're you know, these visuals are a great help, like, to your pitch, so people understand exactly what you're going for. That's why the proof of concept works so well, because it shows exactly what you're going for instead of you explaining it. Explaining something is a lot harder to get people to think of the right thing for your message to come across than just showing them. So of course, when we're talking about a visual medium such as film, we want to show what we're talking about. Also, if you're able to, you may want to see about adding sounds or music clips to a digital presentation for the pitch, so that they can hear what it sounds like as well, especially for anything hard to explain that is unique. If you have the ability to, and you have an idea for how the music will be, or you have an idea for what the sound of this animal that doesn't exist will sound like if you were going to create something like a Wookiee in Star Wars, and you'll be like, I can't even do it, because it's a mixture of different animals, but you have that idea of what that's going to sound like in your head. If you can get that before you go to the pitch and you can actually share it with them, it might be better than just explaining, oh yeah, he growls like a bear thing, because it's a different sound. It's something that doesn't exist unless it's mixed together with other sounds. So, or you have an idea for, oh, it's going to be an orchestral musical note here that's going to play while this intense thing happens or while this very dramatic moment is going. If you can actually play the music, it will automatically let them feel it, because it'll give them the exact idea of what you're going for. Now, I haven't heard of sound clips and music clips being used that much in pitches, but they have been used before. You don't have to use them. Visuals are more important to get the idea of what you're going for across, I would say. But setting the tone and getting that feeling right, if you have the ability and you have the funding to be able to get that stuff before you actually go to pitch it, I think it would help a lot, because if you're showing this picture while you're playing the music of what's happening during the scene, and you're reading through the scene or you're explaining the pitch, it'll instantly allow them to feel and get the feeling of the film, the tone of the film, and the look of the film all at once. So being a better communicator is not easy. It's very hard. A lot of people struggle with it, especially now that we have phones and text messages and email, because that is our main mode of communicating now. So communicating in person is becoming harder for everybody to do because we're not as used to it as we used to be. It takes practice and effort to improve how you are communicating with others and how your message is coming across. Every person sends out a message when speaking, and every other person interprets a message when listening. We use the visual, vocal, and verbal cues to interpret the message. So as the sender, we're telling them our idea. The message is our idea and what it's going to be about, what it's going to be, how much we believe in it, how passionate we are for this idea. It's going to them, the people we're pitching to, and they're hearing it. They're looking at our face, they're looking at our body language, they're looking at this photo that we're sharing, and they are interpreting what we're saying. And then they're nodding along, or they're looking confused, or they're frowning. And that is coming back to us again. So that we're seeing their message, their verbal, maybe they're speaking like, what? I don't get it. Or they're just looking confused. That's something you can see as a speaker and interpret that they're not understanding it. And then you might want to figure out a different way to approach the pitch, or a different way to explain it, or just extend the explanation of it, kind of explain a little bit more detail so that they start to understand better. That's just one of many things that you could see on someone's face while you're speaking to them. Bless you. There's always potential for error and misunderstanding when communicating to somebody. They might not understand what your message is. They might not understand what you're trying to say. You might not understand that their facial expression doesn't mean they're confused. They just need to go to the bathroom and whatever else, they're just making a face. So there's potential for error and all of that, which is why you try to be as clear as possible and to the point when you're doing a pitch. You need to be quick, to the point, make it clear to understand so that it's less chance for this error and misunderstanding to happen. And that is also why when pitching, we practice it over and over again, and we don't just wing it, because we want to make sure that people understand it. We want to practice it on people, make sure that they understand it, so that when we go to pitch it to the actual decision makers, we can make sure they're going to understand it like the people we've practiced on, and not just what we think is going to be understood. The good thing about pitching is that it is pre-planned and tested. You have the ability to plan it out and test it. It's not like normal communication. It's a presentation. So you have the ability to not perfect it, but you have the ability to get it close to perfection if you work hard enough at it. But that is why it needs to be clear and to the point and brief. And also why you want to add visuals when you can. We want to make our message and passion as clear and attention grabbing and attention holding as possible. As you pitch and test it out, and the more you go to real pitch meetings or pitch your idea, script, or film with an elevator pitch, the less nervous you'll become and the better you'll do with the pitch itself. But always consider how you might be able to improve your communication skills and how you might be able to improve your pitch. Because as you go, if you're pitching to 10 people and it's not working for the first 5, you might start to learn what you're doing wrong. You might start to learn what you could do better and kind of adjusting your pitch as necessary. So the next 5 people you pitch to, you just instantly create a better chance of you getting them to give you what you want, whether that's funding or producing it or whatever it may be. Other than that, does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about verbal, vocal, and visual communication? I will say that sometimes you will not be in a pitch meeting. Sometimes you will be having just to send a pitch kind of through an email. And that is when you want to pay particular attention to the words you're choosing to use, to the way you're describing characters, the way you're describing things, because all they have, like I said, is that verbal, the words you're using, the actual wording. And you want to make sure that it is as descriptive and as close to what you are trying to say as possible. Mad, angry, frustrated, furious, those are all different variations of the same kind of thing, but they mean slightly different things. And we have those different words for a reason. It's because furious, you just automatically think that they are extra mad than mad. Angry, frustrated. Frustrated, they might not be as angry about it. They might just be, I don't know, frustrated. Like I can't even describe it, but you know what I mean from me saying it. So be extra careful with how you say things and the words you choose, especially when you're describing your story, your characters. And then, like Priscilla said, stay formal for the rest when you are trying to just maintain professionalism about the way you are talking to the actual people you're emailing. Gabe, you say you have a question?
Yes. Now, at what stage do you set up the pitch? Like, if you want to set up a pitch meeting.
So a pitch meeting, you won't be setting it up. You'll have to reach out to whoever the investors or whoever you're trying to pitch to, and they will contact you back if they're interested, and then set up a pitch meeting. Or maybe you might meet them in person and they'll set up a pitch meeting with you, or you'll call them or whatever, and it's a company that's an investment company into films. There's many different ways you can, but basically they are going to be the ones that set it up for the pitch meeting, and they're going to tell you what they require you to bring, what if they require the script, if they require a preliminary budget, whatever the things that they require are, they'll tell you. And so if you have an idea that you actually believe is going to work and you want to work on it, you should start working on all of those pitch items, making that preliminary budget, thinking about your target audience. That way, when you get the chance to actually go to a pitch meeting or have an elevator pitch to somebody, if you just meet them in person and then, they're eating at Subway or whatever, and you're like, hey, blah, 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 my name is this. Oh, cool. What are you working on? Now you have your chance to pitch to them. You want to have it all ready to go and available. So
okay,
when you have an idea, I would say if you're trying to get investments, or if you're trying to get people interested in it, like actors or producers or whoever, and you're trying to get people on board, I would say start working on your pitch right away, because your idea, it's hard to formulate your idea into words and communicate that to somebody else if all you have is the idea. That's why when I'm doing this media studies thing, it's like I have lists of notes of what exactly I want to say, because if I don't say it that way, then it's going to be harder for me to describe if I'm just showing a picture of it. sometimes I'll just go off the picture, but other times I'll actually look through my notes and read it out because I made sure to try to communicate it in a certain way so that it's understood correctly. Otherwise, it's going to be harder for me to explain and harder for you guys to understand. And even then, sometimes what I say is still hard to understand based on what I'm saying. So yeah, I would say if you have the idea and you want to try to get people involved, start working on the pitch right away. But I would say though, wait until you're done with the script. You know, try to have a full written script, not just an idea.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
All right, cool. All right, last thing we're talking about is Wikipedia. Wikipedia pages for your film specifically. Oof, this is ugly. Some of these pictures are way too small. You can use Wikipedia to create a page for yourself, your production company, or your film. So this is coming from Fahad Ali. This is letter A in the syllabus. It is the video, How to Create a Wikipedia Page for Yourself, Organization, Person, Profile, Biography. So first, you want to create an account on Wikipedia. Most Wikipedia pages have a title, followed by a synopsis of what the page is about. And so you can see right here, there's the title right up here. Well, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's pretty blurry, but title. And then right here in this section, they call it the abstract. It's just the summary of what the whole page is going to be. And then you have the subsections with different headers or titles for each section, each paragraph area. You know, so if you're talking about your production company, you could say like Inception, when it was created. And so you have a subsection of Inception, and you can talk about when it was created and how and who owns it and how many films, productions, whatever. And then you can describe what films you've made and all of that. If it's just a specific film, you'll probably won't have that large of a page, but it depends on what you're trying to create it for. If it's for a production company and you've done a few projects, you'll probably have a longer page because you want to describe each project briefly in the page itself. You can create a section title and header for different subjects. You need at least 4 sections to automatically get a table of contents list like this. And so that'll automatically create a contents list when you save the page and then have each of your subsections listed. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that way people can click on them and go to that instead of scrolling down the page. You can also link internally to other Wikipedia pages or to external sources with the link button, which when you're creating a page, you'll have something like this. It'll look kind of like Microsoft Word, I would say, or email. And you just click the little link button, and then you can link certain words or phrases to other parts of Wikipedia or to something that goes to an outside external source. You can also add citations to credit someone or something for anything, whether it's something they said or something they worked on or whatever. And for an example, a paragraph taken from a blog, a website, a speech, an article, or a publication that they've written about your film or that they've written about your production company, you can take what they actually said or a portion of what they said, put it into your Wikipedia page, and then link back to the source saying, oh yeah, this is from, you know, oh, it was called the best movie of the year by blah, 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 blah publication. And then you have an external citation link that shows where that information came from. It came from that publication's website, their actual magazine, if they have one, you know, wherever it came from. You are basically just telling Wikipedia where you got that information from. This next stuff comes from Page Wiki Service. This is letter B in the syllabus. The video is how to create a Wikipedia page that will get 100% approved. So once you try creating a page, it can be a few days to a few weeks before it's approved. In some rare cases, you may be contacted by an editor of the approval team requesting additional resources. in order to check for credibility. In most other cases, if you're not approved, obviously you're going to get rejected from being able to create that page. To get approved, you want to try to provide references, which linking back to your website can help, or if you've had, like I said, publications or blogs that talk about you, your production company, your film, whatever you're making a page for. You want to try to have as many references as possible to be able to show that it's a legitimate thing and you're not just creating a Wikipedia page out of thin air when your production company hasn't been mentioned anywhere, you don't have a website, you have nothing to reference or link back to. You also want to try to be error-free. Always check for spelling and grammar, because if you're not, you might not be able to have that page made. They might deny it just based on that. And you want to be sure to look into the Wikipedia guidelines and abide by those, because one of them actually says avoid self-promotion, shameless or otherwise. So, that is like, basically they don't want you to self-promote your company or yourself, because all Wikipedia pages are supposed to be written in a neutral standpoint. So these guidelines can change, so be sure to check them out, the most recent version, whenever creating a Wikipedia page. Like I said, Wikipedia wants every written page to be written in an unbiased, neutral standpoint. So if you're writing about yourself as a creative, you may have the most difficulty getting approved. So because you're writing about yourself, you're already biased about who you are and how well known you are, and how good you've done with the things you've made and all of that. So you might have the most difficulty getting approved if you're basing it on yourself. So just be sure to try, if you're going to try to write a page about yourself, be sure to write it in a neutral, factual manner only. Don't be like, oh, he's the greatest filmmaker ever, or whatever, because that's just not going to get approved. This is also why it's good to have links to your website as a reference in any articles or interviews you may have had. If you have a website, it just ups your legitimacy for Wikipedia to approve it. If your page doesn't get approved, you can always try making it better and then trying again. I don't think there's a limit to how many times you can try to get a page approved. So you don't really have to worry about that. Look it up first, but I don't think there is. On Wikipedia, you can also create these little info boxes, which are found on a majority of pages, especially for film. They usually show the key art, and then they say like how long it is and what genre it is underneath in these little info boxes to the right of the Wikipedia page. And they can include the photo information from pre-selectable list. So for films, if you're trying to add information to the bottom of it, Wikipedia already has like pre-selectable things that you can add information for. That could be the budget, that could be the genre, that could be where it was filmed, whatever they have for it, that's what you can use. You can't make up your own information, at least not for these information boxes. You can add an info box by going to insert, there's a button. So you got the link button, the site button, little hamburger menu, and then the insert. You can do insert, and you'll click template, and then you'll type in info box into the template, and it'll pop up and pre-generate a little box like this where you can insert an image and other details as you add them in. Wikipedia also has other templates for other things. I'm not sure exactly what they have, but they have plenty so that it makes it easier for everyone creating a page to select certain assets that they want to add into their page. So you can look through that if you'd like. I didn't really look into it yet. This next stuff comes from wikispecialistllc.com. It's letter D in the syllabus website. Getting a Wikipedia page for your film or your production company can help you gain awareness and visibility. When people search for your film or your company, Wikipedia is well optimized for search engines and can help people find your film very quickly, much quicker than if you just had a website alone. If you can help make your project seem more legitimate, it can help make your project seem more legitimate and professional as well, because, it's also on Wikipedia, it's also on IMDb, it also has its own website. The more of those things that you can do, the more legitimate and professional that thing will seem. Like I said, you need to link references. So try to get blogs, articles, and news outlets to write about your film or your company before you try to make your own Wikipedia page for it. Because if you don't have any references, it's very hard to get a brand new Wikipedia page approved, I've heard. You also want to try to use specific keywords in your pages as well to increase the search engine optimization, or SEO, for the search engines. And so, indie film or something like independent film, stuff like that, the certain keywords you can use in the Wikipedia page itself so that it gets, the search engines like Google and stuff will place it higher in the results when people search for independent film. That could be making it an easier find for them, which helps you. So just like you would do if you're writing stuff on your website, writing for Wikipedia pages, you also want to think about search engines and try to give it specific keywords that people will look up and find so that your page pops up a lot more than others. Wikipedia has so many pages already and has so many references and outside sources that link back to it that it is very search engine optimized already. And it lists high on search engines just because it's one of the biggest encyclopedias out there, basically online encyclopedias. So you can help enhance it even further by adding those keywords into your pages, as well as having a Wikipedia page in the first place. And you can use these techniques to create an easily findable page that helps searchers find more information about your film or your company. You can't just go out and make one. Like I said, they have to be approved. And so I would wait on it. But if you have articles and stuff writing about it, especially about a film that you've made, and you're trying to build an audience, or you have a company that you're trying to grow, like a production company, making a Wikipedia page for it can really help. Just make sure you stay unbiased and neutral and factual with it, and don't insert any kind of emotion or how you feel it should be, or make it seem better or bigger than it really is, because that'll automatically get it denied. And like I said, if you're making a page for you yourself, you usually want to have some kind of productions under your belt or something that you've done, because otherwise Wikipedia is going to be like not wanting to make a page on this random person that nobody knows. You have to be a little well known, even if it's just, you're only known by 100 people, at least you're known for something.
Yeah, every social media platform has its thing, and the thing with Wikipedia is it's supposed to be factual. So you're not supposed to embellish it one way or the other. It's supposed to just state this, this, and this. This is what it is. This is what it's about. This is what we're doing. Cool.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about Wikipedia? All right. I did have one more thing. I didn't really have anything to write down about this, but film investment companies, the first letter A in the syllabus, musicgateway.com, they give a list. I'm not sure how many of these companies are still active. I don't know when this list was made, but they give a list of different investments companies, basically film investors and film investment companies, that if you are trying to find investing, especially if you're trying to find large investments and large funding, because you have a really big idea, you might want to try searching for some of these, that going to a list like this and finding who best matches what you're trying to do, and if they're close to you or where they're located. And they have like this big, huge list of different companies that you can go through and read about and see if any of these match what you're looking for. If not, then you might have to search other places. But that's basically it. Like I had it, and I thought I'd add it to the syllabus since I had it. And then there's the other ones underneath that: Rap Book, Peacock Film Finance. Pretty sure that's Peacock, like the actual Peacock, and Aperture Media Partners. Those are all like film financing companies. And so it depends on what project you're making, but those are some other ones that you might find. And obviously that's not all of them, but it was just like a good starter place. And I didn't really have anything to write about it or comment on other than that those are there. So I added them to the syllabus for you guys. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything to add about that?
Good.
All right, so like I said, there's no studies Thursday. Thursday was just going to be Wikipedia and film investment companies, which is why I just decided to add it to today. The other thing that was going to be on Thursday was introducing characters, but it wasn't the right information I wanted, so I decided to leave it out. Basically, when you're introducing your characters, you, like we've already been saying, you want to communicate who they are well. You want to make sure that you don't just say he's a detective. What kind of detective? How is, and what kind of person is he? You know, is he a rash, or is he irrational, and is he explosively irrational detective? You know, they high strung, he's this, he's that. Something like that's going to really communicate what type of person he is, so that it can help better explain that character in an easy to follow way. And so you really want to pick your wording right when you're talking about those characters and describe them with very specific and clear verbs, pronouns, nouns, and make sure you're saying who they are too. What do they do? Detective, that's good. Now we know he's a detective. He's not just a man. He is a this, you know, he's a lawyer. He's a this. And now what kind of lawyer is he? Or what kind of person is she? And that way you can figure out, like, they can just specifically figure out who that person is and kind of get the idea of how they would act in these scenes. So when you're describing the rest of your stuff, not just your characters, you're describing now your story, you kind of get the idea of how this explosive, irrational person, detective, might act during this scene instead of just a man or a woman, because now we don't know who they are, what they do, or anything about them. So when you're introducing your characters into the stories, just make sure that you are explaining them properly and you're giving them adjectives and verbs and making them active, as well as describing what their occupation is. Even if they don't work, they'll stay at home dad, stay at home mom, or just a out of work, blah, blah, blah. You know, whatever it may be, you want to describe who they are and what they're doing, so it's easier to grasp for people, because they don't know who these characters are. And characters are the main thing that can draw people into a story. And that was it for what was going to be on Thursday. Next Monday, we are going to be talking about marketable elements. We've already sort of talked about that before. We'll dive a little deeper into it. Marketing to multiple target audiences and what you have to kind of do differently. And Unreal Engine 5 filmmaking. So that goes along with the virtual production that we talked about before, but this is like using that video game engine to actually make films. I've seen people start to do that, so we'll describe that a little bit. Doesn't really have to do with this semester, but I didn't really know where else to add it, so I added it to this. Other than that, guys, just make sure that you are, if you're going to take part with those exercises that we're doing, those are going to be due December 1st. Thursday, we have no meetings, and the meetings are starting to get a bit shorter. We have less stuff to go over. We've covered a lot. And so there's more time So if you're going to take part, if you're going to participate in those, just be sure to jump on it because there are 4 of them and there's a lot. Does anybody have anything to add or anything to say before we say goodnight?
Great class.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So what'd you think?
Bye.
Have a good night.
All right, you guys too. Thanks for coming,
All
everybody.
right. Good night. Mhm.
Message. What was it?
Good night.
All
Oh,
right.
good night.
I was just kidding. I was saying, what did you think of the meeting?
Oh no, I thought it was good.
She's on her phone.
It was very long. You know, I was like, oh, I really shouldn't have made this ahead of time. Now it's cold and stale. So I really should have made it earlier. But so I was checking on that, like I was seeing if I could fix it or not. I can't, so it's fine.
All right. All right. Good night, guys.
All right. Good night.